Chapter 9:17. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before the crowd could realize what had happened, they saw the white tiger illusion, which had an imposing aura, dissipate in an instant. At this moment, even the Xian formation started to crack. Crack. The originally complicated and powerful Xian formation was instantly covered with spiderweb-like cracks. Zhao Zicheng's heart sank as he quickly retreated. The moment he left his original spot, the huge silver Xian formation shattered instantly. Boom! With a loud bang, the Xian formation turned into countless dazzling rays of light that scattered in all directions. The terrifying impact wreaked havoc in all directions. Zhao Zicheng only felt a tightness in his chest, and the pressure on his shoulders was as heavy as 2 mountains. But at this moment, he no longer had the mood to care about this. He only looked at the Rongxiu in horror. How could this be? How could this be? The Rongxiu didn't even make a move. He only sent out a magical beast and easily destroyed the Xian formation that he had painstakingly set up. And the Rongxiu's words made him even more embarrassed. His face was red and white, and the blood in his chest was surging. He originally thought that he could easily finish off the other party with one move, but he didn't expect that he would be the one at a disadvantage in the end. He was shocked and anxious, and couldn't help but look at the white lion in front of the Rongxiu. Its body was snow white, and only its eyes were ice blue. Its entire body carried a dense chill. Just by standing there quietly, the ground beneath it was already covered with a layer of frost. This is your contracted magical beast? Zhao Zicheng asked in disbelief. From the attack just now, this white lion's rank was at least 8th grade, or even higher. It wasn't that Zhao Zicheng had never seen a higher rank magical beast. After all, Chu Liuyue's 9-colored heavenly pheasant was 9th grade. And in the next few years, when he was traveling outside, he was lucky enough to see it once or twice. He didn't know if it was his illusion, but the pressure and aura around this white lion seemed to be even stronger than the 9th grade magical beasts he had seen before. Just as this absurd and terrifying thought appeared, Zhao Zicheng immediately extinguished it. Impossible. Any contract between a magical beast and a human had to be based on the conditions. Generally speaking, only when a cultivator was powerful enough would he be able to make a contract with a magical beast willingly. If this white lion was really that Rongxiu's strength, Zhao Zicheng closed his eyes tightly, trying to get rid of these distracting thoughts, but his back was still drenched in cold sweat. Rongxiu was probably much stronger than he had expected. Chu Luyue was originally watching leisurely from the side. When he saw Shui come out, he raised his eyebrows slightly. Judging from Shui's attack just now, its strength was almost on par with a 9th grade magical beast. She remembered that when they first met, Shui was indeed a high-level magical beast, but it was only around the 7th rank. How did it suddenly become so much stronger? One had to know that the grade of a magical beast was determined from birth. Only a very small number of magical beasts could increase their grade through continuous breakthroughs. And all of those magical beasts were existences with extremely powerful bloodlines. Moreover, even if Shui originally had this potential, it seemed a little impossible for it to break through to this realm in such a short time. Chu Luyue touched his chin and narrowed his eyes. Could it be that Shui had deliberately hidden its strength in the past? Or, it actually hadn't shown its true realm yet? At this moment, Rongxiu chuckled and nodded. That's right. On this point, I think I should be worthy of you, Dead silence. Everyone present looked at Rongxiu in shock and speechlessness. What did he mean by that? Now, in the entire Tianling, who didn't know that Chu Luyue had returned from the death tribulation and ascended to the throne? And a divine beast was following by her side, the red-tailed red phoenix. Didn't Rongxiu mean that his contracted magical beast was also a divine beast? This time, Shang Guanyu finally couldn't hold back and looked at Chu Luyue. He actually contracted a divine beast? Why didn't you say before? Just this point alone was enough to earn him a lot of points. After all, in the entire Tianling dynasty, only Chu Luyue had a divine beast. Chu Luyue was speechless. She didn't know either. At this time, Sheng Guanyu was still looking at the field, so he didn't notice Chu Liuyue's expression and stroked his beard. When did a prince from the empire of Yaochen become so powerful? No wonder he's so confident. Chu Liyue was speechless. Actually, she wanted to ask more. In an instant, countless images appeared in her mind. She used to think that Xue Xue was smart and cute, but she never thought that it was actually a divine beast. The key was that in her knowledge, there didn't seem to be a divine beast that looked like a white lion. Rong Xiu had never told her this. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. Even Xue Xue's identity and strength were so shocking. What about Rong Xiu? Zhao Zicheng never expected that Rong Xiu would casually summon a divine beast. Looking at the white lion, his face was still full of disbelief. A divine beast. What kind of person could make a contract with it? Didn't they say that Rong Xiu came from an ordinary background? Where did this divine beast come from? Zhao Zicheng faintly felt uneasy, but at this time, the bet had been set, and the two sides had already started fighting. It was absolutely impossible to stop. He forced himself to calm down, adjust his breath, and began to reconstruct the Xian formation. Previously, he thought that he could win easily, so he didn't use his full strength in the first move. But now, they had to be prepared for battle. Just as Zhao Zicheng began to construct the second Xian formation, a few figures suddenly rushed from the sky outside the palace gate. Your Majesty! Chu Liyue and Sheng Guanyu turned their heads at the same time and saw Elder Chen Ku and a few others coming together. Elder Chen Ku was the first to land. He quickly ran to Chu Liyue and Sheng Guanyu and asked nervously, Your Majesty, what happened here? Why was there such a big commotion just now? A few days ago, a big event had just happened in the palace, and their minds were still in a highly sensitive period. Therefore, when they heard the commotion just now, they immediately rushed over, thinking that it was another fight. After asking, Elder Chen Ku and a few others quickly looked around, but found that there was nothing wrong here. On the training field next to them, there were two people confronting each other. Nothing, it's just these two guys fighting. Sheng Guanyu waved his hand, indicating that they didn't need to be nervous. Elder Chen Ku and a few others heaved a sigh of relief. But when they saw the faces of the two people, they were shocked again. What? What's going on? One of them was Zhao Zicheng. Judging from his breath, the commotion just now was caused by him. And the man in white opposite him, a few people wanted to ask, but they felt that the atmosphere was not right, so they all kept quiet and looked at the field. At this time, Zhao Zicheng's second Xian formation was completed. The pressure on it was obviously much stronger than before. He took a deep breath and used all his strength to send out the Xian formation. One Yang formation. Digression, 6:00 clock. Then, he just found that a few chapters were blocked. I'll change the text. Woo-woo. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 9:18. Above the Xian formation, rays of light gathered and slowly rose like a sun. Blinding light shot out from above, making it hard for people to open their eyes. The temperature of the surrounding space suddenly rose. Almost everyone who was standing nearby could feel the burning pain. Elder Chen Ku looked solemn. With a wave of his sleeve, he immediately set up a barrier around the martial arts field. Are the two of them really going to destroy this place completely? He muttered softly with a trace of shock in his eyes. Although the martial arts field in Yuanhe Hall was meticulously built and had a strong endurance, Zhao Zicheng was already a level 8 Xian master. Now that he executed this attack with all his strength, it naturally couldn't be underestimated. There was also the man in white beside him and the white lion beside him. Although he didn't know the identity of this person, judging from the fact that he could easily deal with Zhao Zicheng's Xian formation, he was also extremely powerful. If the two of them really fought, it would really be, Sheng Guanyu snorted when he heard that. Now that it was related to you, how could the two of them hold back? However, at first, he was worried that Rong Xiu wasn't Zhao Zicheng's match and that you would be embarrassed if he lost. But now, he felt that he was worrying too much. This Rong Xiu was able to contract with a divine beast, so he might have some other trump cards. But, how could the seventh prince of country Yaochen be so capable? Due to the impact of the Xian formation, there were already charred marks on the ground. It wasn't hard to imagine how terrifying it would be if all the energy on the ground were to hit one person. The force in Zhao Zicheng's body surged wildly, and his face was slightly pale. This Xian formation was a level 8 Xian formation, and it was also the highest level Xian formation that he could execute. In order to study this Xian formation thoroughly, he had spent a total of 3 years. Normally, even when he was fighting with others, he rarely used this move. Because with his current strength, executing this move would consume a lot of his energy. After using this move, regardless of the outcome, he basically wouldn't have the strength to continue fighting. In other words, he could only win if this move won. He drew the last stroke of the Xian formation with difficulty and immediately pushed it forward. Go! A profound formation that was as dazzling as the sun quickly crushed towards Rong Xiu. Everywhere it passed, the ground was scorched black, and even the air seemed to be burning. The distance between the two of them wasn't far to begin with, and Zhao Zicheng had used all his strength in this attack, so in the blink of an eye, the Xian formation had already rushed to a distance of 5 steps away from Rong Xiu. The berserk energy wreaked havoc and intertwined above the profound formation, and it even stirred up a gale. The corners of Rong Xiu's clothes fluttered in the wind. As they fluttered, faint golden patterns could be vaguely seen, like the sparkling ripples on a clear lake in a starry night. At this moment, he finally moved. He raised his right hand and drew a line in the air with his slender fingers. A streak of silver light instantly appeared in front of him. Then, his finger moved slightly and drew another line vertically. Just like that, the two silver origin powers intertwined to form a cross in front of him. This cross was only slightly bigger than a person's palm. Compared to Zhao Zicheng's Xian formation, it was so small that it wasn't even worth mentioning. Zhao Zicheng stared at him. Isn't it a little too late for you to start building a Xian formation now? In the end, he was too careless. Rong Xiu looked up slightly, and his thin lips curled into a smile. I'm already done. Zhao Zicheng was stunned. What? Already done? Just because of this little cross? What kind of Xian formation was this? Even a level 1 Xian master wouldn't be able to draw 2 lines so easily and call it a Xian formation. It could be seen that this Rong Xiu really didn't know anything about Xian masters. Since that was the case, why did he have to choose a Xian master level to fight with him? Could it be that he just wanted to vent his anger because he was unconvinced? But what was the use of losing like this? Zhao Zicheng couldn't help but feel annoyed. A man with such mediocre strength and character didn't deserve to stand by her side. If you want to prove your strength, there are plenty of ways. Why do you have to do this? Before Zhao Zicheng could finish speaking, he saw Rong Xiu turn his wrist and push out the cross. From afar, it looked like a silver butterfly that was about to take flight. That butterfly flew past lightly and quickly arrived in front of the huge Xian formation. Then, it directly passed through it. Chi! A faint sound was heard. Zhao Zicheng's voice stopped abruptly. He looked at the scene in front of him in shock and almost suspected that he had seen wrongly. That little cross, did it directly penetrate his profound formation? One had to know that the One-Yang formation contained an extremely abundant amount of force and couldn't be broken so easily. Furthermore, that thing, right at this moment, that terrifying Xian formation suddenly stopped 3 steps away from Rong Xiu. In the next moment, the light on the Xian formation quickly dimmed and was covered by a thick layer of ice. Zhao Zicheng suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness. No, crack. The crisp sound of something shattering resounded in the field. After that, the Xian formation shattered into countless pieces. It suddenly dissipated. Pfft! Zhao Zicheng was severely injured and his body shook violently. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a step back, almost falling down. The aura around him quickly withered and his entire body seemed to have been drained of all his strength and spirit. Only that pair of eyes that were filled with shock and horror showed his current mood. You. You. He opened his mouth with difficulty and could only smell the stench of rust in his mouth. He wasn't the only one. Everyone at the scene was astonished. Just now, Rong Xiu actually used that small, cross, Xian formation to defeat Zhao Zicheng. Swoosh! That cross circled half a circle in the air and flew back. Rong Xiu raised his hand and easily caught it with his slender fingers. The whole process was as simple as throwing out a dart. There was dead silence. Rong Xiu seemed to be unaware of the surrounding people's reactions and looked at Zhao Zicheng. Do you admit defeat? His tone was light and his expression was calm. Looking at that pair of deep and cold phoenix eyes, it seemed to hide countless unfathomable stormy waves. Zhao Zicheng's heart trembled violently. At this moment, he finally confirmed that Rong Xiu was indeed far stronger than him. Others might not know, but just now, when his Xian formation broke, he clearly felt an unparalleled pressure spreading out from that cross Xian formation. That was indeed a Xian formation. If he guessed correctly, there was an even higher level Xian formation hidden within those two streams of light. However, Rong Xiu did not open it. But it was enough to deal with him. Zhao Zicheng closed his eyes. I admit defeat. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 919. Zhao Zicheng actually admitted defeat just like that. The moment he said that, everyone had a complicated expression on their faces. Actually, they could already foresee this outcome when they saw the previous scene. Zhao Zicheng clearly didn't have the strength to continue fighting, and he had no chance of winning if this dragged on. He was severely injured, but Rong Xiu didn't even move a single step from the beginning to the end. Looking at the entire scene, he merely raised his hand and casually swiped twice. What was the point of continuing the fight? It was only right for him to admit defeat now. But who would have expected such an outcome 15 minutes ago? Zhao Zicheng was a level 8 Xian master. Elder Chen Ku, did you see it clearly just now? Was that a Xian formation or not? A few elders from the royal family couldn't help but ask softly. Elder Chen Ku frowned and took a deep breath. That was indeed a Xian formation. Hearing this, the elders looked at each other in dismay. But how can a Xian formation be like that? It's just two forces intertwined. How can it break a level 8 Xian formation so easily? Elder Chen Ku stared at Rong Xiu in the arena and didn't explain further. Why? Why else could it be? Naturally, it was because the cross Xian formation executed by Rong Xiu was stronger than Zhao Zicheng's. Generally speaking, the higher the level of a Xian master, the better their control over their force. Under such circumstances, the more complicated the Xian formation was, the stronger its power. This was also why everyone was puzzled by Rong Xiu's victory. In the eyes of ordinary people, that thing of his might not even be considered a Xian formation. But it clearly contained a power that was stronger than a level 8 Xian formation, and it easily destroyed it. Elder Chen Ku faintly recalled that there was once a rumor that a top-notch Xian master could turn complex Xian formations into extremely simple diagrams, and they could also possess terrifying power. Could it be Rong Xiu was like that? But those who could reach such a level were all. Where exactly did this Rong Xiu come from? Elder Chen Ku couldn't help but ask. He is the 7th prince of country Yao Chen and also Yu Er's fiancé. Shangguan Yu also came back to his senses at this time. Hearing Elder Chen Ku's question in a low voice, he answered solemnly. The elders were all taken aback. Yao Chen? Isn't that the place where Chu Luyue came back? It seemed to be just a vassal country of Tianling. How could there be such a strong person? Shangguan Yu let out a long sigh, but the waves in his heart still hadn't calmed down. He looked at Rong Xiu with admiration in his eyes. He glanced at Chu Luyue and sighed meaningfully. Yu Er's words are true. This Rong Xiu's talent and strength were indeed not inferior to hers. Just her talent as a mystic cultivator was enough to crush Zhao Zicheng. Not to mention the fact that he had formed a contract with a divine beast. Even if he didn't have a high status, having this was enough. That trace of doubt from before had completely dissipated at this moment. Shang Guanyu's heart was finally at ease. Chu Luiyue blinked her eyes and didn't know whether to laugh or cry for a moment. In fact, even she didn't know that Rong Xiu was so strong in this aspect, even she might not be able to withstand that blow just now. Rong Xiu. How did he cultivate to such a level? Shang Guanyu stood up and looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu, you. Very good. Rong Xiu nodded with a smile and bowed slightly. Your Majesty, you flatter me. How is that a compliment? Shang Guanyu had a good first impression of Rong Xiu. Now that he had witnessed his strength with his own eyes, he admired him even more. You are worthy of it. Rong Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly, and the smile in his eyes deepened. It seemed that today's visit to his father-in-law was quite successful. Shang Guanyu turned his gaze and looked at Zhao Zicheng. Come, help second young master Zhao to have a good rest. Zhao Zicheng's face turned red and white. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. Zicheng is fine and can go back on his own. It was enough to lose this round. If he had to be helped away again, he would lose face. Zhao Zicheng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, gritted his teeth, and looked up at Rong Xiu. You are indeed strong. There was no sarcasm or jealousy in this sentence. It came from the bottom of his heart. He was really convinced. I admit that I am not as strong as you. I admit defeat. Tomorrow, I will leave West Hill and won't disturb you anymore. When he said this, Zhao Zicheng felt as if his heart had been pierced by countless silver needles. His heart was filled with pain. He turned his head and glanced at Chu Luiyue. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Then, he smiled. Although he didn't get what he wanted this time, he didn't regret it. He had said and done what he needed to do. He had no regrets. Please. Treat her well in the future. Zhao Zicheng covered his chest and coughed violently. Rong Xiu's eyes darkened. She is the person in my heart. I will naturally cherish her 1,000 times more than anyone else. Zhao Zicheng laughed self-deprecatingly. That's true. I worried too much. This man was completely different from Jianghu. He could give her the best. Thinking of this, Zhao Zicheng turned and left. Rong Xiu also walked toward Chu Luiyue. After taking 2 steps, Zhao Zicheng stopped again. He turned around and asked hesitantly, Can I ask you a question? Rong Xiu looked sideways. Zhao Zicheng held his breath and asked, How? How did you cultivate to this level? Rong Xiu thought of something and a faint smile suddenly appeared on his face. You taught me. He had no interest in being a mystic master. He only practiced to accompany her for a while. Digression, Rong Xiu. God knows how many skills I learned to pursue my wife. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 920. Zhao Zicheng choked and felt that Rong Xiu was joking. Back then, Shang Guanyu did have astonishing talent in mystic cultivation, but she was also a level 8 mystic cultivator back then. It was impossible for her to teach someone like Rong Xiu, who could crush level 8 mystic cultivators. It seemed like he didn't want to say it. However, Zhao Zicheng didn't mind. The cultivation of mystic cultivators was different from that of martial artists. They usually needed a master to teach them step by step. This way, the master-disciple relationship would be closer. Rong Xiu might have his own considerations for not telling him his master. After all, there were indeed many reclusive experts in this world who didn't like to show their faces in public and didn't like to casually reveal their identities. To be able to nurture a disciple like Rong Xiu, he must not be a simple person. Zhao Zicheng cupped his hands and didn't ask any more questions. He turned around and limped away. His back, which was originally considered tall and slender, now had a hint of loneliness. Did you just say that I taught you? Chu Luiyue narrowed her black eyes and asked when she saw Rong Xiu walking over. She had just recovered to level 6 mystic cultivation and had yet to cross the threshold of level 7. The strength he displayed just now wasn't something she could teach. I actually didn't know that I had such an outstanding disciple. Also, this disciple is like me and has contracted a divine beast. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she turned her gaze and glanced at Xue, who had followed Rong Xiu over and was about to pounce over happily. Xue's movements froze. For a moment, it didn't know whether to go forward or retreat. Under Chu Luiyue's scrutinizing gaze, Xue felt guilty. It shook its head and looked around. Actually, it didn't want to hide it. If it wasn't for Master's request, it wouldn't lie to her. Rong Xiu suddenly smiled. We've played chess together so many times. Even if I don't want to learn, I know a little. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Only then did he understand what Rong Xiu meant. From a certain point of view, a chess game and a profound formation shared an extremely high degree of similarity. Moreover, it tested one's agility and flexibility to an extreme degree. Usually, when she played chess, she would mix it with the Xian formation sometimes. Rong Xiu's words seemed to make sense. However, the doubts in Chu Luiyue's heart had not been completely eliminated. Even if Rong Xiu was just joking, the top-notch talent and strength that he displayed could not be mistaken. She actually didn't know that he was so powerful above mystic cultivators. There seemed to be countless mysteries hidden in his body. He was mysterious and unfathomable. However, when those eyes were looking at her, they were so sincere and clean. They were open and honest, without any concealment. She could feel his heart and inexplicably felt that no matter what, he would always stand by her side and shelter her from the wind and rain. In fact, she didn't trust people so easily. However, when facing Rong Xiu, trust and dependence seemed to have become instinctive. Everything became natural. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and looked at Sheng Guanyu. Father, I want to talk to Rong Xiu alone. How could Sheng Guanyu not see that Chu Luiyue had something to ask Rong Xiu? He immediately agreed. Anyway, I've already seen him. Yu has a good eye. If there's anything, you can discuss it yourselves. After saying that, he patted Rong Xiu's shoulder meaningfully and left. Elder Chen Ke wanted to go forward and ask a few questions. Seeing that Sheng Guanyu had left, he swallowed the rest of his words and left with the other elders. However, after walking for a long distance, Elder Chen Ke still looked dignified. That Rong Xiu doesn't seem to be as simple as he looks on the surface. When most of the people around had left, Chu Luiyue said, "Let's go back to Jianghu Hall." Rong Xiu stepped forward and held her hand with a doting smile on his lips. Okay. Chu Luiyue glared at him. What are you doing? Rong Xiu turned his face, leaned closer, and chuckled. Exercising my fiancé's rights. The news that Chu Luiyue had a fiancé from Prince Yao Chen's 7th prince spread rapidly in the palace as if it had grown wings. At the same time, Zhao Zicheng challenged Chu Luiyue to a battle in order to marry her. In the end, he lost miserably, which immediately became the topic of everyone's conversation. When most people heard the first news, they were just shocked and surprised. But thinking about it carefully, this was actually quite normal. After all, Chu Luiyue seemed to be a girl from a fallen family in country Yaochen. Marrying a prince was actually a social climb. However, the second news was too strange. Who was Zhao Zicheng? The second son of the Zhao family. The most outstanding genius of the Zhao family's younger generation. Even though he wasn't in Xiling these few years, most people still remembered how amazing he was back then. They heard that he had already broken through the bottleneck and become a level 8 mystic master. That Rong Xiu actually defeated him? It was simply unbelievable. Didn't this prove that he was even more outstanding than Zhao Zicheng? A prince from a small affiliated country? These things quickly caused a huge uproar in Xiling. And Rong Xiu's name quickly became the focus of everyone's discussion. No matter how turbulent the undercurrents were outside, Jianghu Hall was silent at this moment. Chu Luiyue dismissed her attendants, leaving only her and Rong Xiu in the room. Oh, and Xue Xue. Ever since she came in, Xue Xue had consciously found a corner to lie down, looking as if she had been wronged and admitted her mistake. Looking at its drooping brows, those who didn't know would think that it had just suffered a huge blow. Who would be able to compare this listless white lion with the divine beast that tore an 8th-level Xian formation apart with a single claw? However, Chu Luiyue was rather satisfied with Xue Xue's proactive attitude of admitting its mistakes. Compared to its master, it was simply too obedient. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu and narrowed her eyes dangerously. Rong Xiu, don't you have anything to say to me? Rong Xiu's long eyelashes fluttered, and he smiled. What do you want to hear? Asking the obvious. Chu Luiyue's gaze scanned him from head to toe. Then, let's start with your strength. You should be a level 9 mystic master now, right? Rong Xiu's lips moved slightly. He wanted to say no, but he swallowed the words back. He nodded. Hearing him admit it himself, Chu Luiyue, who had already expected this, still felt her brows twitch fiercely. Even back then, she couldn't cross the threshold of level 9 mystic master. She didn't expect Rong Xiu to be one long ago. Why didn't you say so before? Chu Luiyue's tone carried a hint of warning. Rong Xiu blinked innocently. You didn't ask. Chu Luiyue, she couldn't refute this. Then let me ask you now. Other than being a level 9 mystic master, are you also a celestial physician? Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and asked. Rong Xiu slowly leaned back in his chair and tapped the table rhythmically with one hand. After a moment, he looked up. There seemed to be a dense light in his eyes, and his voice was low and languid. What do you think? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 921. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched. The meaning of Rong Xiu's words was self-explanatory. She narrowed her eyes. Then, your celestial physician rank, Rong Xiu pondered for a moment and smiled faintly. I know a little. Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched. She would be a fool to believe him. Since when are the disciples of Mingyue Tianshan so powerful? Chu Luiyue had never been to Mingyue Tianshan personally, but she knew a little about it. Mingyue Tianshan was a sect that was independent of the various empires and had a rather aloof feeling. Compared to empires of Yao Chen's level, it was a little stronger. This was also the reason why Rong Xiu was sent to Mingyue Tianshan when he was born in poor health. There were powerhouses that the Yao Chen Empire could not match. However, although Mingyue Tianshan was powerful, it was still outside heaven's canopy and could not be compared to the Tianling dynasty. Then, how did they nurture a powerhouse like Rong Xiu? Rong Xiu seemed to have seen through her doubts, so he leaned back and looked at her with interest. You were born in Yao Chen. Aren't you already a powerhouse that ordinary people can't reach? Chu Luiyue was speechless for a moment. After her rebirth, she did not have the Tianjing Yuan meridian from her previous life. It was almost as if she had to start from scratch. She had indeed suffered a lot on the way back from Yao Chen to Xiling. At the same time, she had encountered enough luck to be where she was today. If she could do it, why couldn't others? Moreover, from the beginning, she had already determined that Rong Xiu was extremely dangerous. At that time, she had already expected that he was extraordinary. But now, she clearly realized that she was much stronger than he had imagined. Chu Luiyue was silent for a while before she said, Rong Xiu, you still haven't told me where your identity as the Son of God came from. As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell into silence. Rong Xiu looked into her eyes. There seemed to be waves of light swirling in his phoenix eyes, like a whirlpool that could completely devour people. After a while, Rong Xiu suddenly said, Do you still remember my mother? Chu Luiyue was a little surprised by his sudden question, but he still nodded. Who didn't know Consort Wan, who was the queen of the empire of Yao Chen's harem back then? Rong Xiu smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. His voice was extremely light. The so-called Holy Sun is my identity in my mother's family. Chu Luiyue had thought of many answers before, but none of them were close to this. His mother's family? Didn't they say that Consort One came from an ordinary family? How come now? Chu Luiyue suddenly recalled the day when the third prince led his troops to rebel. Rong Xiao and Emperor Jiawen seemed to have a decisive battle. At that time, when Emperor Jiawen wanted to break through and enter heaven's canopy, Rong Xiao once said something. He seemed to have said that his mother's wish in life was to not let Emperor Jiawen step into heaven's canopy. Yes. Now that he thought about it, the cause and effect of everything could be explained. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. Why your mother is from heaven's canopy? Rong Xiao nodded. Chu Luiyue was dazed for quite a while. I see, she had suspected it before, but as too many things happened later on, she had thrown this matter to the back of her mind. This means that Rong Xiao is actually from heaven's canopy. His mother's status is clearly much higher than Emperor Jiawen's. Then. Back then, my mother went out of heaven's canopy to train. When she met with danger in a territory, she met father by accident, and the two of them got together. But when they got married, my mother didn't know father's identity. Rong Xiao lightly said. Chu Luiyue pressed her lips against each other. Even though Rong Xiao said it very simply, she could roughly guess the ins and outs of the matter. A woman from heaven's canopy who married Emperor Jiawen was marrying a lower status. Besides, from various situations, Rong Xiao's mother's clan didn't seem to be an ordinary family. Consort Wan was young and naive. When she met Emperor Jiawen, she thought that she was destined to be with him, so she didn't hesitate to be with him. In the end, she didn't expect that she would marry an emperor with a harem of 3,000. No one would be willing to accept and forgive such deceit. It was no wonder that there were rumors that after Consort One entered the palace, she was still depressed even though Emperor Jiawen doted on her a lot. She only stayed in the palace for a year or two before moving out. She also didn't go back until she died. As for her background, it should be made up by Emperor Jiawen. After I was born, mother sent me to Mingyue Tianshan. A few years later, the clan's people came and wanted to bring mother and me back. It was a pity that mother had already passed away. Rong Xiao's tone was calm, and his expression was quiet as if he were talking about someone else's matters. Back then, mother secretly married an outsider, and it went against the clan's rules. After she found out about father's identity, she became a concubine and was too ashamed to return home. Thus, she kept hiding from the clan's people until she passed away. Actually, back then, she sent Rong Xiao to Mingyue Tianshan because she didn't want his identity to be exposed. She thought that she could be at ease if she handed Rong Xiao over there. However, many things that she didn't expect happened after that. Of course, she wouldn't know about all of this. Chu Luiyue looked at him with a normal expression as if she had already seen through all of this, but her heart still ached slightly. So, all these years, you haven't been staying at Mingyue Tianshan? She asked softly. Rong Xiao responded. I would come back occasionally, but I wouldn't stay for long. I didn't find a suitable time to tell you about this. Are you still angry? Chu Luiyue sighed in her heart and shook her head. It was naturally very difficult for him to return to the clan with such a background. Rong Xiao had a grudge against Emperor Jiawen, and they had completely fallen out back then. Hence, he definitely wouldn't be willing to go back to Emperor Yao Chen. This was probably one of the reasons why he decided to give Emperor Yao Chen's throne to the third prince after planning everything. As for his mother's family, it was obvious that his identity was a little awkward. Rong Xiao, it must have been tough on you all these years, right? From what Rong Xiao said previously, it wasn't hard to guess how strict Consort Wan's family was. And Rong Xiao. To them, they might not be willing to accept him. Rong Xiao thought for a while. It's all right. Even if he obtained the position of Prince of Grace, many people were eyeing him covetously, and many wanted to rebel. Hence, it was a little troublesome to deal with them. Rong Xiao nodded and saw her heart-aching eyes. He smiled slightly, held her hand tightly, and pulled her into his embrace. Her gentle and sweet aura instantly filled his arms. He hugged her slender waist and buried his head in her shoulder, smelling the faint fragrance of her cloud-like hair. A certain empty place in his heart seemed to have been filled. "I'm fine." He spoke softly as if he was murmuring and pouring out his heart. "I have you, With you, it's enough." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 922. Chu Liuyue's heart softened, and she lowered her head and gently kissed him on the lips. It was slightly cool and soft. "Rongxiu, I'll be your family in the future, okay?" She retreated half an inch, stared into his eyes, and said seriously. Even though Rongxiu didn't say it, she could feel the lonely aura on him, as if it came from his bones. His hands were cold, and so were his lips. But she thought his heart was warm. If he was alone in this world, she was willing to stay by his side. With true love, as close as family. She didn't want to ask anything else. She only knew that he was him. Everything else had nothing to do with them. Whether he was the seventh prince of Yaochen or the holy son of a certain family, it didn't matter. What mattered was that they were each other's. Rongxiu looked at her. Suddenly, he hugged her tightly with one hand, held her face with the other, and kissed her. His hand was very strong, as if he wanted to crush her into his bones and blood. However, his other hand was unbelievably careful, as if he was holding a rare treasure and was afraid of bumping into it. Amidst the endless madness, there was also a strong restraint that was filled with love. The vague words scattered between his lips and teeth. "Okay." Rongxiu's victory over Zhao Zicheng had a far greater impact than expected. Because other than Zhao Zicheng, there were many young talents in Xiling City who had some thoughts about Chu Luyue. Whether it was identity, appearance, or talent, the current Chu Luyue was absolutely top-notch. When she was still the princess, countless people admired her. Now that she had killed Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Wanwan, ascended to the throne, and returned in glory, countless people naturally bowed to her. However, Rongxiu's appearance instantly disrupted these people's thoughts. Zhao Zicheng was the first to be beaten up. The rest of the people naturally calmed down and had to think carefully. Even a level 8 mystic master was defeated by Rongxiu. One could imagine how strong he was. It was impossible to say that he wasn't afraid. But at the same time, there were also many people who were skeptical. Zhao Zicheng was a famous genius in the Western Tomb and could be said to be one of the best among the younger generation. How could he lose to a mere prince from Yaochen? However, the news did indeed come from the palace. It was said that there were many people who saw it with their own eyes. For a time, there were different opinions, which made many people curious about Rongxiu. Countless people wanted to see for themselves what kind of person this Rongxiu was. Chu Luyue had originally planned to wait until the matters in the Tianling dynasty were settled before confessing everything to Rongxiu and putting the wedding on the agenda. However, he did not expect that Chu Ning would be taken away. After this incident, the wedding could not be carried out for the time being. Even though the other party didn't seem to want to hurt Chu Ning on the note, Chu Luyue was still very worried. From the beginning until now, the other party knew her identity like the back of his hand. It was obvious that he was targeting her. However, she knew nothing about the other party. After thinking about it, she asked Rongxiu again. This time, Rongxiu didn't hesitate and nodded directly. He knew where the note came from. But when Chu Luyue wanted to continue asking, Rongxiu didn't continue to answer and only said that it was not suitable for her to know these things now. Chu Luyue was a little confused by this answer. Then, when will I find out? Rongxiu paused. The current Chu Luyue was only a rank 6 warrior. Even if she knew these things, there was nothing she could do and it would only increase her worries. If you break through to rank 7 in a month, I will tell you. Chu Luyue frowned slightly. Breaking through to rank 7 wasn't difficult for her. The difficult part was achieving her goal in this short month. One had to know that she had just returned from the Red Moon Desert and had just reached the middle of rank 6. This speed was already very fast. If she broke through to rank 7, it would be terrifying. As if seeing her concerns, Rong Xiu smiled. If you trusts me, I will be your sparring partner for this month. How about it? Chu Luiyue looked at his confident and calm smile, and her heart suddenly ignited with fighting spirit. It's a deal. There was also a martial arts field in the backyard of Zhao Yu Hall. It was even bigger and of higher quality than the one in Yuanhe Hall. This was because this was the place where Chu Luiyue used to cultivate. Other than the ground being paved with incomparably hard green stones, there was a level 9 Xian formation on the entire martial arts training ground as a protection. It could ensure that any fluctuations produced in the martial arts training ground would not casually spread to the outside and would not harm others. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu stood face to face. As the order had already been given, there were no palace servants around to serve them. There were only the two of them in the huge martial arts field. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu opposite her. Thinking that the two of them had known each other for so long but had never really fought, she couldn't help but be eager to try. She had long known that Rong Xiu was very strong. It wasn't easy to wait until now, and she was able to recover a part of her strength. Perhaps she could compete with him. With that thought, Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. Rong Xiu looked at her excited face and raised his eyebrows slightly. This familiar scene was really nostalgic. Rong Xiu, you don't have to go easy on me later. Just attack. Chu Luiyue was sure that she wouldn't be a match for Rong Xiu in terms of Xian master. But for martial artists, that might not be the case. After all, although she looked like she was only at the middle of rank 6, her combat power had already reached the level of a rank 7 martial artist. The bitter training she had gone through in the Red Moon Desert wasn't for nothing. Rong Xiu smiled and responded. Okay. Xue, who was lying in the field, looked at her master with disdain. You don't even have a draft when you lie, Pui. Rong Xiu sensed Xue's gaze and glanced at it coldly. Let's not talk about the past. Now that you hadn't fully recovered, if he really attacked without holding back and hurt his wife, he would be the one feeling heartache. What else could he do if he could only pamper the wife he pursued? At this moment, Chu Luiyue moved and went straight for Rong Xiu. She was extremely fast. In the Red Moon Desert, Chu Luiyue's most obvious improvement was her close combat power after fighting with those puppets. Therefore, her speed had increased by a lot. In addition, now that she had recovered her identity, she didn't need to hide the many cultivation techniques that she had cultivated in the past. Naturally, it was more convenient. In the blink of an eye, the slender and tall figure had already rushed in front of Rong Xiu. She clenched her fist and threw a punch. Before she could see how Rong Xiu moved, his figure had already disappeared in front of her. Chu Luiyue missed her attack, so she turned around without thinking and gave a side kick. Bang! Rong Xiu easily clamped down on her ankle with one hand. Chu Luiyue was shocked and took advantage of the situation to flip in the air. Rong Xiu quickly released his hand and avoided her attack. Tisk, are you trying to murder your husband? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 923. Chu Luiyue landed lightly on the ground like a swallow. She looked at Rong Xiu and snorted when she heard his teasing. You can easily block my attack without using your full strength. Isn't it inappropriate for you to say that? Rong Xiu didn't even make a move just now. He just defended himself. But even so, she was still able to sense that his cultivation level was definitely far above hers. As your sparring partner, you have to have some strength. Otherwise, what if you get beaten down? Rong Xiu raised his hand with his palm facing up. He bent his fingers slightly and said with a smile, Are you coming? Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth. The force in her body surged crazily, and her aura rose to its peak. A star gradually flickered on the tip of her finger. Come. Jingshan finger. It was impossible to pose any threat to Rong Xiu with a small fight. She could only go all out now. A satisfied smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. If she wanted to improve her strength quickly and steadily, she had to constantly challenge her limits. Coincidentally, he knew where her limits were the best. Therefore, he was the most suitable person to be this person. In the next moment, a cluster of golden flames appeared in Rong Xiu's palm. After Elder Chen Ku returned, he pondered for a long time and finally went to see Shang Guanyu. When he arrived at Yuanhe Hall, Shang Guanyu was reading in his room. He raised his head when he heard the commotion. "You're finally here." He didn't look surprised. Apparently, he had already expected this. "Please take a seat." Elder Chen Ku was an elder of 3 dynasties. His status was extraordinary. Even Shang Guanyu had to be polite to him. Seeing Shang Guanyu's reaction, Elder Chen Ku knew that they were thinking about the same thing. Therefore, he didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. It seems that His Majesty also feels that something is wrong. Elder Chen Ku frowned and went straight to the point. "That Rong Xiu's identity. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Based on the strength that he had displayed previously, how could a prince of country Yaochen possess such strength? Even if he was talented, without sufficient resources and opportunities, it was impossible for him to reach his current level. I've seen his father before." Shang Guanyu put down the book in his hand and suddenly said such a sentence. Mediocre and mediocre. Even if such a person was fortunate enough to give birth to a talented child, it wouldn't be too exaggerated. Rong Xiu was obviously far surpassed this standard. "You mean?" Elder Chen Ku was bewildered. "I have a feeling I've seen his aura before." Shang Guanyu rubbed his temples. "But I can't remember at the moment." However, he had a good impression of Rong Xiu the moment he saw him. Therefore, she didn't continue to ask him many questions, but let you, ask him. "Elder Chen, what do you?" "Since he is here, he must have something." Elder Chen Ku hesitated for a while. "Is Zhou's too?" Shang Guanyu paused and looked up with a sharp glint in his eyes. "Elder Chen Ku, do you think so too?" Level 9 mystic cultivators are extremely strong, just like level 9 warriors. They are only one step away from the next level. There are only a few of such cultivators in the entire Tianling dynasty. Rong Xiu is so young, but he's already at this level. Other than that side, who else can nurture such a person? Shang Guanyu stroked his beard and seemed to agree. "That's what I think too. You, was born with a Tianjing Yuan meridian and was a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. That's why she could reach a level that ordinary people can't reach in their lifetime. As for Rong Xiu, he couldn't see through. Taizu should know more about this matter, right?" Elder Chen Ku looked a little serious. But it seems that Taizu didn't talk to her about this. Taizu must have his own considerations. "Maybe he has already told you, Shang Guanyu pondered for a moment. "Now that Yu has ascended to the throne, many things have settled down. I'll find a time to talk to her in detail." Elder Chen Ku nodded and then murmured curiously. "If Rong Xiu is really someone from that side, why did he appear as Prince Yaochen? His Majesty was killed back then, and he was reborn over there. Isn't this too much of a coincidence?" There was one more thing that Elder Chen Ku didn't say. If Rong Xiu's real identity is really as we think, then it's really hard to say who's going to marry who in this marriage. Shang Guanyu fell into deep thought and waved his hand. "Forget it. As long as you recognizes him and he recognizes you, it's fine. As for the rest, there's no need to care so much. By the way, I asked you to investigate Jiang Yucheng before. What did you find out?" Elder Chen Ku calmed down and sat up straight. His expression was much more serious. "You don't say. I really found something wrong. Jiang Yucheng seems to have been secretly contacting someone in the past few years. Moreover, it seems that he has been following the other party's orders and has been working for the other party. It's just that he has been very secretive, so we can't find out who the other party is." Shang Guanyu snorted coldly. "So, there's really a master behind him?" Yes. In addition. Elder Chen-ku hesitated for a moment and stopped talking. In addition? Shang Guanyu asked. In addition. Mu Qinghe seems to have something to do with this matter. Shang Guanyu frowned tightly. He's Jiang Yuqing's man. It's normal to have something to do with him. No. Elder Chen-ku shook his head. If Mu Qinghe is simply Jiang Yuqing's subordinate, it stands to reason that she is not qualified to contact the person behind this. But that's not the case. She seems to have contacted the person behind Jiang Yuqing's back. Digression, the 5th update is a little late. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day everyone. Don't forget to receive the monthly Red Packet mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 924. Really? This time, Shang Guanyu was really taken aback. After thinking for a moment, he slowly said, in this case, Mu Qinghe may not be completely Jiang Yuqing's man, but what was his purpose for doing this? When Yu asked if Mu Qinghe had betrayed her, Mu Qinghe admitted it without hesitation. From the beginning to the end, he didn't defend himself. Mu Qinghe was personally trained and promoted by Yu. Compared to others, their relationship was naturally much deeper. And his actions made Yu feel a sense of betrayal, which was even more intense compared to other people. According to what Mu Qinghe said before, he was Jiang Yuqing's man from the beginning. But from the current situation, it seemed that there was something fishy. If there was an inside story, why did he have to do this? As if he couldn't wait to be sentenced to death? Is Mu Qinghe still imprisoned in the Mu Mansion? Yes. Shang Guanyu stood up, but after taking 2 steps, he stopped again. Elder Chen-ku asked tentatively, Your Majesty, do you want to go to the Mu Mansion and ask in person? Shang Guanyu put one hand behind his back and shook his head. Forget it. If he doesn't want to say, no one can get anything out of him. I'll tell you, this news when I have the chance in the future. I'll make a decision later. Elder Chen-ku nodded and asked again, then, Rong Xiu, let's wait and see first. Yes. Mu Mansion. The courtyard was cold and cheerless. Other than a few armored blackguards patrolling the area, there was no one else around. Jian Fengqi stood at the door. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but sigh with mixed feelings. In the past, although Mu Mansion was only guarded by the Black Cavalry, the atmosphere at that time was very different from now. In the past, it was still a bit lively, but now, it was no different from a prison. He had always stayed away from this kind of place, but now he had to come. Jian Fengqi, you're here again? A figure flashed, and Shii appeared. After removing Lei Laoxi's mask, the current Mitsui looked much more refined than before, and he was also thinner than before. However, he still looked very strong and sturdy. In addition to his tyrannical strength, he was able to create an invisible pressure just by standing there. Jian Fengqi coughed. It's fine if you come once or twice, but you come every day. Mitsui looked at him suspiciously, smacked his lips, and finally couldn't help but ask the question that had been bothering him. What is he trying to do? Jian Fengqi accepted his fate and walked inside. Is he still doing nothing in his room today? Yeah. Shii shrugged. You can go by yourself. Ever since His Highness came, the 3 of them had a talk in the room. He didn't know what they said, but after that, their reactions were very strange. His Highness seemed to be in a daze, and after she left, Jian Fengqi scolded Mu Qinghe for an hour in exasperation. He didn't say anything specific, but the main idea was that she didn't know what was good for her. As for Mu Qinghe, since that day, he had been staying in his room and never came out. His Highness didn't restrict his freedom when he locked him up in the Mu residence, but he didn't seem to want to come out. Hence, ever since then, Jian Fengqi came every day. However, it didn't seem to be effective. Mu Qinghe was a stubborn person who would not be moved by force or persuasion. Shii crossed his arms and shook his head. Actually, he couldn't figure it out either. Back then, Her Highness was devoted to Mu Qinghe and was even more devoted to him than to the 13th Guard. How could Mu Qinghe, this ingrate, betray Her Highness? Yet, His Highness didn't have the intention to kill him until now. Shii swung the hammer in his hand and walked away. The door wasn't locked. Jian Fengqi pushed the door open and saw Mu Qinghe sitting there. Hearing the noise, he didn't react, as if he didn't care at all. Seeing him like this, Jian Fengqi was furious. He snorted and leaned against the door frame. Are you going to be like this forever? Mu Qinghe didn't say anything. Are you happy to say those words on purpose and make her run away? Jian Fengqi frowned. His eyes, which had always been flirtatious, seemed to be covered with a layer of thick frost at this time. Mu Qinghe finally reacted. I'm just telling the truth. If you do something wrong, you should be punished. Jian Fengqi was so angry that his teeth itched. Bullshit. Now isn't the time for you to beg me to help her find evidence. Jian Fengqi quickly stepped forward and grabbed Mu Qinghe's collar. Believe it or not, I'm going to tell her everything right now. Mu Qinghe frowned and pried his hand away. It doesn't matter if you tell her. Can you prove that I have nothing to do with what happened in the past? It doesn't matter whether she kills me or not. Now that the truth is out, everything is fine, isn't it? I think Jian Fengqi wasn't happy to hear this. He was about to hit him again when he inadvertently caught a glimpse of blood on the back of his hand. He suddenly froze and took a closer look. He wasn't injured, and Mu Qinghe was the only one who touched his hand just now. This was Mu Qinghe's blood. Jian Fengqi's face suddenly changed. What's wrong with you? Mu Qinghe saw the blood on the back of his hand and frowned. He was so careless. It's nothing. Mu Qinghe said lightly. She nonchalantly took a handkerchief from the side and wiped the blood off her hand. But that white handkerchief was soon completely stained with blood. The corner of Jian Fengqi's eyes twitched violently. The amount of blood Mu Qinghe was bleeding. Something was clearly wrong. He chased after Mu Qinghe and made a move, wanting to grab him. Mu Qinghe dodged easily. But she lost her balance and crashed into the chair next to her. Mu Qinghe managed to catch her with difficulty, but her face turned pale and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Jian Fengqi was even more shocked. This is thump. Mu Qinghe fainted and suddenly collapsed to the ground. Zhao Palace. Time passed by minute. Unknowingly, it was already evening. The sun was setting in the west, reflecting a gorgeous glow on the thick clouds. The sparring between Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu had finally come to an end. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, and her strength was almost completely exhausted. On the other hand, other than Rong Xiu's slightly messy clothes, there was nothing unusual about him. It was as if he had just taken a leisurely stroll instead of sparring with Chu Luyue for so long. Chu Luyue panted heavily, looking at Rong Xiu and couldn't help but grind her teeth. This man had always suppressed his strength to a level higher than hers. How infuriating. You actually hid so much of your strength. She was about to walk forward, but her body went limp and she fell forward directly. Rong Xiu went forward and pulled her into his arms, then carried her horizontally with a smile on his lips. Not at all, I'm just a little stronger than you, this time. You'll definitely win next time. Chu Luyue pinched his face and snorted heavily. I'll definitely surpass you next time on the Qingyan roll. Digression. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day again, mobile users. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 925. Rong Xiu's movements suddenly paused. His brows twitched imperceptibly as he looked at Chu Luyue in his arms and slowly asked. What did you just say? Chu Luyue was also stunned. The azure cloud roll, what was that? Why would she suddenly say such a thing? It was as if she had said the same thing before. I don't know either, Chu Luyue murmured and immediately frowned as she kept recalling and searching in her mind. But she couldn't remember anything. Rongxiu stared at her face and saw a faint layer of doubt in her eyes. His hanging heart relaxed a little. He calmly turned his gaze away and lowered his eyelids to hide the emotions in his eyes. "I'll send you back first." Chu Luiyue nodded absent-mindedly as she wrapped her arms around Rongxiu's neck and leaned on his shoulder as she thought about what had just happened. The Azure Cloud Roll, she said that she must win against Rongxiu on the Azure Cloud Roll next time. Rongxiu. She suddenly spoke and glanced at Rongxiu. "Have you heard of the Azure Cloud Roll?" The man shook his head as the afterglow shone on his smooth and perfect side profile. It was still breathtaking. But he didn't say anything. Chu Luiyue had some doubts in her heart. Rongxiu's meaning was that he didn't know. But why would she say such a thing to Rongxiu just now? Perhaps this was related to the memory she had lost? Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought and planned to find a chance to think about it when she returned. Rongxiu carried her and walked back. Fortunately, after Chu Luiyue returned, she had cleaned up the people in the palace. There were almost no palace servants left in Jianghu Hall. In addition, this martial arts field was a relatively private place in Jianghu Hall. From here, she could directly return to her sleeping quarters. Rongxiu didn't meet anyone along the way, so he directly carried her to her bedroom. Just as he shouted, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms was quiet. He looked down and saw that the woman in his arms was leaning on his shoulder with her eyes closed. Her breathing was even and she seemed to have fallen asleep. Rongxiu couldn't help but laugh, but he also felt a little heartache. It was probably because the previous training was too tiring. However, the fact that she could fall asleep so quickly in his arms proved that she was at ease. This made Rongxiu feel a lot more relieved. He carefully placed her on the bed, wiped her sweat, and covered her with a thin blanket. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, Rongxiu's eyes gradually overflowed with gentleness. When she was like this in the past, although she was often exhausted, it was very rare for her to fall asleep directly. Returning to the West Hill for revenge this time must have consumed a lot of her energy and mental energy. It was a good thing that she could have a good rest now. Rongxiu held her wrist. A pure and gentle energy slowly flowed into her body. In her sleep, she seemed to be dreaming of something and whispered something. Rongxiu listened and vaguely heard that it was related to the green cloud roll. He frowned slightly. Now that she had not broken through to the 7th level, it was reasonable to say that that thing was still sealed in her body and she should not be thinking of this. But it seemed that it was much faster than he had expected. With the nourishment of Rongxiu's power, Chu Luiyue's brows gradually relaxed and she finally fell asleep peacefully. Rongxiu stood in his original spot quietly for a while and looked at Tuanzi, who had appeared at the side without him knowing. "Take good care of her." Tuanzi nodded sensibly, which was rare for her. Rongxiu then turned and left. Shueshue followed closely behind. Walking out of Jianghu Hall, Rongxiu looked into the distance and in a certain direction. If he remembered correctly, Huayang Hall should be over there. It was also the place where Sheng Wanwan and Jiang Yuqing were imprisoned. Rongxiu thought for a while and turned around to leave the palace. Chu Luiyue had a long and messy dream. In the dream, she seemed to be competing with someone in order to win first place on the green cloud roll. The other party's face and figure were very blurry. But his strength was extremely strong. She lost again and again, and lost again and again. Sometimes it was very quiet, sometimes it was very noisy, as if many people were watching and cheering. She wanted to see the other party's face clearly, but she could not. After some time, even she could not remember how many times she had competed. She finally won the competition again. She was very happy, and the person opposite her seemed to be very happy too. Someone was shouting something around them. She vaguely heard that it seemed to be you. The person opposite her suddenly took a step forward. It was as if he had suddenly broken through a layer of fog. His figure gradually became clear. It was a young man wearing a black brocade robe, with a green jade belt around his waist, easily outlining the man's tall figure with wide shoulders and narrow waist. He seemed to have said something to her. The surroundings were quiet for a moment, and then there was a burst of enthusiastic cheers and screams, as if it was boiling. As for his face, it was gradually revealed. Whoosh, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. Her body was covered in cold sweat, and her heart was beating so fast that her ears were numb. She calmed down for a while before she realized that she was dreaming. Dumpling flew over and rubbed against her face intimately. Chu Luiyue hugged Dumpling in her arms, and the waves in her heart gradually calmed down. After waking up, everything in the dream began to quickly forget. That man's figure seemed very familiar. But that face, in the end, she did not see it clearly. An absurd thought was born in her heart. She vaguely felt that the man in the dream who was competing with her seemed to be the one on the octagonal pavilion on the cliff. And he was extremely similar to the first master. Night fell. The 100 Herbs building was already closed, and Yu Ling was checking things on the 3rd floor. Suddenly, he heard something. When he turned around, he was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. Master. He hurriedly bowed. Master, why are you now? Rong Xiu waved his hand. I'm just here to take something. Yu Ling heaved a sigh of relief. God knows how he felt when he turned around and saw his master standing there. Yes. Yu Ling hurriedly responded. Seeing Rong Xiu walk inside, he was still very surprised. Now, his master's name was well known in West Hill. Everyone knew that the new emperor had a fiancée. Although he was born in Yaoqin, he defeated Zhao Zicheng. Did you pick it for madam? Yu Ling followed him and asked carefully. In fact, when he learned that Chu Luiyue was actually from Shangguanyu, he was also very shocked. He was wondering why his master returned to Yaoqin back then, so that was the reason. Rong Xiu nodded and walked to an inconspicuous shelf. On it was a fist-sized, inconspicuous pine stone jade box. Perhaps it was because it had not been touched for a long time, but it was covered with a faint layer of dust. Rong Xiu did not seem to care and raised his hand to take it. Yu Ling was slightly surprised. So this was what his master wanted. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 926. Yu Ling wanted to ask something, but he didn't. Rong Xiu had just put away the green pine stone jade box when there was a knock on the door. Master, I have something to report. It was Yu Mo's voice. Yu Ling looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu said lightly, just come in. Yu Ling then understood that it was his master who called Yu Mo over. Yu Mo pushed the door open and entered. When he saw Yu Ling, he nodded gently and then bowed to Rong Xiu. Master, you guessed right. Jiang Yuqing has contacted that person again. Yu Ling was shocked when he heard this and immediately said, Master, I'll go and guard outside. Rong Xiu nodded, and Yu Ling hurriedly left. When he left, he even carefully closed the door. Walking out of the door, Yu Ling's expression was slightly serious. It seemed that his master was going to make a move. Yu Mo had been staying in West Hill during this period, secretly investigating Jiang Yuqing's matter. After the matter was exposed some time ago, the entire Jiang family was executed, and Jiang Yuqing was also imprisoned. Yu Mo waited for a long time before he finally found this clue. The time should be yesterday. A look of disdain flashed across Yu Mo's eyes. He chose this time because everyone in the Jiang family is dead, and everyone has lowered their guard against him. This Jiang Yuqing is really selfish. In order to survive, he is willing to let the entire family die with him. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. He has always only cared about himself, so it's not surprising that he would do such a thing. Jiang Yuqing thought that he had climbed up the social ladder, but he was just too smart. Have you found out the identity of that person? Yu Mo paused and shook his head. I only found out that the other party is Jiang Yuqing's backer, but I didn't find out his identity. Rong Xiu didn't seem to care. If it's so easy for you to find out, then I'm too incompetent. Jiang Yuqing is now trapped in Huayang Palace. How did the news get out? Yu Mo's expression became serious. There's a special way to send messages in Huayang Palace. Mu Manor. The next day, the morning sun shone in through the window. Mu Qinghe's eyes moved, and he finally opened them. His vision was blurry at first, and then he subconsciously closed his eyes. You're awake? A cold voice came from the side. Mu Qinghe turned to look and saw a familiar face. Jian Fengqi crossed his arms as he sneered at him. There were 2 dark circles under his eyes, and he looked a little haggard, as if he hadn't rested well. S to me to saves to ts, from now on ts. Understand. To him to his t, s twos t t tst his's twos her s's, sstss. He knew his own body. Jian Fengqi didn't need to. Hearing this, Jian Fengqi was instantly infuriated, and he couldn't wait to go forward and beat him up. Thinking that he was the one who saved Mu Qinghe, he suppressed his anger and pointed at Mu Qinghe angrily. You're really something. I must have had nothing better to do to help you. Mu Qinghe leaned against the bed and closed her eyes, seemingly unmoved. You're not the only one I owe my life to. Chu Liuyuez was already too much for him to pay off. Jian Fengqi suppressed his anger and didn't want to continue arguing with him. He stepped forward, pulled a chair, and sat opposite Mu Qinghe. Speak. What's wrong with your body? Mu Qinghe said indifferently. 'Tis just an old injury. Jian Fengqi sneered. Do you really think I'm a celestial physician for nothing? The poison in your body is quite old, isn't it? It's extremely cold and has already penetrated deep into your organs. Even if you can't clear it, you'll be dead by now. This kind of poison doesn't exist in the West Hill, nor in the entire Tianling. Don't tell me you don't know. Mu Qinghe didn't say anything, as if she couldn't be bothered to explain. The 2 fell into a silent confrontation. After a while, Jian Fengqi stood up. Don't worry. I can't do anything about your poison, but that doesn't mean others can't. I'll go to the palace and ask someone. He turned around and left. Just as he was about to step out of the door, he heard a voice behind him. Wait. Chongshu Pavilion. Yi Ranran arrived at the herb garden early in the morning, ready to take care of the herbs. But when she arrived, she saw that someone was already there. She took a closer look and exclaimed in surprise, You're a genius. Pavilion Master? Yuchi Song cut off the withered leaves of the Longtan Ganoderma in her hand and straightened up. She smiled kindly at Yi Ranran. Yi Ranran walked over and asked curiously. Pavilion Master, why are you here personally? Yuchi Song smiled. I have nothing to do anyway, so I came to take a look. Yi Ranran squinted her eyes. You miss Luyu? Most of these herbs were taken care of by Luyu. It wasn't hard to understand why the Pavilion Master was here. Yuchi Song smiled and gently knocked on her head. You can call her that in our Chongshu Pavilion, but you can't call her that outside. She had regained her identity. Moreover, she was the emperor and the supreme existence of the Tianling dynasty. Naturally, she couldn't be treated as casually as before. Yi Ranran stuck out her tongue. Ranran knows. It took her a long time to accept this matter. Pavilion Master, if you miss her, why don't you just go to the palace? After all, the Pavilion Master was Lu Yu's master, wasn't she? Yuchi Song sighed and shook her head. She must be very busy this time. Besides. Pavilion Master. Lu Jiao suddenly ran over quickly. Pavilion Master, Qi Dai said he remembered what happened in Nanjiang. Yuchi Song's eyes lit up. Let's go. Xiling City seemed to gradually calm down. The Jiang family and the Xiahou family, who had once been arrogant and insufferably arrogant, were completely destroyed overnight. In addition, many clans and people were also implicated and robbed in this turmoil. Days passed, and these shocking events seemed to gradually subside. People were very forgetful. Not long after, Xiling City had already regained its usual liveliness. It was as if those things had never happened. And the strong smell of blood after the beheading finally dissipated completely. Ordinary people continued their lives as usual. It was as if they had long forgotten about Sheng Wanwan and Jiang Yuqing who were imprisoned. However, in a place where everyone couldn't see, there was a surging undercurrent. A month passed in the blink of an eye. It was almost the 1-month period agreed on the note. In Zhaoyu Palace, Chu Luiyue was cultivating. She sat cross-legged with her hands on her knees. Vigorous force surged wildly. The force of heaven and earth in the surroundings began to pour into her body. She was preparing to break through. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 927. In this 1 month, she sparred with Rong Xiu almost every day, and her battle prowess increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, every time her battle prowess increased, Rong Xiu's battle prowess would increase as well, and he would always be able to suppress her. He seemed to be very clear about what level he should maintain his battle prowess at, so that he could stimulate her potential to the greatest extent without causing her any harm. But actually, this was the most terrifying part. This was enough to prove that Rong Xiu's control of force had reached an unimaginable level. Chu Luiyue did not believe it at first, but later on, she realized in despair that Rong Xiu, she really could not detect his true strength. Every time she thought that she had found his weakness and could defeat him, she realized that he still had plenty of room to maneuver. Thus, slowly, Chu Luiyue also realized that it would take a long time before she could completely defeat him. But this did not affect her. Instead, it made her even more determined to fight. And gradually, she also realized that this kind of exchange of pointers was actually more effective than the bitter training in the Red Moon Desert. Compared to those puppets, Rong Xiu was much better in all aspects, and because he could use force, his battle prowess was stronger. Chu Luiyue thought about it day and night, pondering on how to defeat him by a move or two. Under such circumstances, her battle prowess had unknowingly increased by leaps and bounds, and she had been improving rapidly. So, after a month, she finally touched the threshold of a breakthrough. Previously in the Red Moon Desert, she had already broken through to the middle stage of the 6th level. If she broke through again now, she would be at the peak of the 6th level. Chu Luiyue held her breath and waited, calming her heart and looking inside. In her dantian, on top of the water droplet, 6 veins floated quietly. The first 5 veins were extremely beautiful, only the last one was slightly dim. The force that entered her body washed through the yuan meridians in her limbs and bones, and finally all gathered here. Like 100 rivers flowing into the sea, it continuously devoured the surging power. At the same time, the 5 treasures were connected, and the aura contained within was continuously increasing. Time passed quickly. At a certain moment, Chu Luiyue finally felt that the time had come. He gathered all the force in his dantian together and fiercely slammed it toward the water droplet. Boom! The 2 forces fiercely collided. Chu Luiyue's body exploded with a roar. After that, the sound of something breaking resounded. Crack! It was as if an invisible barrier had been broken. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue could clearly see that the 6th line seemed to have shed its gray layer, gradually revealing a gorgeous and intense color. Wang! A wave of fluctuation spread out from above. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes, which were originally as black and clean as black jade, now seemed to be burning with 2 balls of fire. One was as red as the blazing sun. One was as transparent as the cold moon. It was as if the 2 forces had perfectly fused together, erupting with an unparalleled aura. At this point, the peak of the 6th step. Sheng Guanyu had just walked out of Zhaoyu Hall when he sensed a terrifying aura erupting from it. He quickened his pace and walked inside. That power seemed to be coming from Yu's bedroom. In front of the tightly shut door stood a tall and straight figure. It was Rong Xiu. At this time, he was raising his hand to set up a layer of bounded domain outside the bedroom, which easily blocked all the fluctuations inside. Like raindrops falling into the sea, it did not cause any waves. Sheng Guanyu's pupils shrank. Although he was not as talented as you, his strength was not bad. After recuperating during this period of time, he had returned to the peak of the 8th step. Otherwise, he would not have been able to ascend to the throne. But when he saw this scene, he suddenly realized that Rongxiu's strength was definitely above his. And this also made him more convinced of his previous guess. Hearing the noise, Rongxiu turned around. When he saw Shang Guanyu, he smiled slightly and bowed to him. Shang Guanyu looked at him with a complicated expression. Are you protecting you, Rongxiu nodded. She has just broken through to the peak of the 6th step. Although he had expected this before, hearing Rongxiu's confirmation with his own ears, Shang Guanyu was still quite excited. Really? He looked at the closed door with eager and proud eyes. He remembered that when you came back, she seemed to be only at the middle of the 6th step. He did not expect her to break through to the peak so quickly. During this period of time, thanks to your help, right? Shang Guanyu glanced at Rongxiu and asked. He knew that Rongxiu went to the palace at a fixed time every day to accompany you, to practice. Obviously, Rongxiu's contribution could not go unnoticed for you, to be able to break through so smoothly. Rongxiu's smile deepened. Her talent is outstanding. To her, this is not a difficult thing to do. His words and actions showed that he did not mean to take credit for himself. Shang Guanyu did not speak again. Breaking through from the middle of the 6th step to the peak seemed to be a small step, but in fact, there was a huge gap in the middle. Even cultivators with the Daijing Yuan meridian could not smoothly break through without at least half a year. Yu's speed was almost comparable to that of when she had the Tianjing Yuan meridian. During this period of time, he had secretly inquired about Yu's past. He learned that she was born a loser with a damaged Yuan meridian and reached this step in just a year. In comparison, her cultivation speed was even faster than that of the past. At this moment, with a creak, the door finally opened. Rongxiu waved his sleeve, and the ward disappeared in an instant. It turned into countless light spots and quickly disappeared in midair. Shang Guanyu could not help but look at Rongxiu again, and became more curious about his identity and background. Just what kind of powerful force could nurture such a person? These thoughts flashed through his mind, and Chu Luiyue had already walked out. She was a little surprised to see Shang Guanyu. Father? Shang Guanyu looked at her with relief. I haven't congratulated you for breaking through again. Chu Luiyue's eyes were bright, and she was in high spirits. She took a few steps forward. Thank you, Father. What brings you here today? Shang Guanyu nodded and took out an invitation from his bosom. The Biming dynasty sent a letter. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It's coming. Digression, updated at 6:00 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 928. She reached out and took the letter, seemingly unintentionally asking, We don't have much contact with the Biming dynasty. Why would they write us a letter? Shang Guanyu shook his head. I haven't opened it yet. Chu Luiyue glanced at the invitation. There was a line of words on it. To the Emperor of the Tianling dynasty. Her eyebrows twitched. The handwriting was exactly the same as the one on the note. She suppressed her racing heart and opened the invitation. It was an invitation. Chu Luiyue quickly finished reading and knitted her brows slightly. Shang Guanyu asked worriedly, What's wrong? Did something happen? Chu Luiyue handed the invitation over. The Biming dynasty has invited the other 4 dynasties to Lin State. Why are we going to Lin State? Lin State was the capital of the Biming dynasty. Although the dynasties in Heaven's Canopy occasionally communicated with each other, they didn't have much contact with each other. It was extremely rare to invite so many people from dynasty to the same place all of a sudden. Shang Guanyu asked as he read through the invitation. Immediately, he exclaimed in shock. The ancient Phoenix Mountain is opening? That's right. The letter said that the ancient Phoenix Mountain would open in half a month. They thought that the Biming dynasty alone wouldn't be able to handle it, so they invited several dynasties to go together. Chu Luiyue frowned. The ancient Phoenix Mountain was a mountain outside Lin State City. It was where the Taizu of the Biming dynasty tried to break through to the god realm. Unlike Shangguan Jing, their great ancestor had indeed succeeded in doing so back then. Since then, the entire ancient Phoenix Mountain had become the divine mountain of the Biming dynasty. Although it was also something that happened 1,000 years ago, it was because of this that the entire Dark North dynasty seemed to be superior to others for many years. The surrounding dynasties were more polite to the Biming dynasty. The invitation was written by the crown prince of the Biming dynasty. I heard that he's the only son of the Biming dynasty's old emperor. He's very talented and has always been favored. Now, half of the imperial power of the Biming dynasty is in his hands. Shangguan Yu glanced at the letter and pondered for a moment. Regardless of whether it's for the ancient Phoenix Mountain or for the sake of the Dark North dynasty, the people from the other dynasties will probably go. Chu Luiyue nodded. That was what she thought too. Shangguan Yu pondered for a moment and asked doubtfully, however, the other 3 dynasties are all neighbors of the Biming dynasty, and they have frequent interactions with each other. Only our Tianling dynasty is far away from them, and we have almost never had such interactions with them before. Why would they write such an invitation? Chu Luiyue's eyes darkened. It turned out that the people who kidnapped Chu Ning were from the Dark North dynasty. Moreover, if he guessed correctly, the mastermind behind all of this was the so-called Prince Biming, Jun Zhiqing. In the end, he was here for her. However, she had never been to the Biming dynasty and did not know this Jun Zhiqing. Why would he do this? Whether it's right or wrong, we'll know when we go. Chu Luiyue said firmly. Shangguan Yu hesitated for a moment. Why don't I go on your behalf this time? Chu Luiyue shook her head. It says that the emperors of the various dynasties are invited to bring their people. They must already know that their daughter has ascended to the throne. If you go on their behalf, I'm afraid they will criticize you. Shangguan Yu was actually a little worried. But, it was precisely because this letter was so obviously targeted that he had some misgivings. For some reason, he felt that this invitation was not friendly. Chu Luiyue saw the worry between his eyebrows and smiled. She raised her hand and smoothed the wrinkles between his eyebrows. All right. Father, are you still worried about your daughter's work? Moreover, they said that the ancient Phoenix Mountain was going to open this time, and they invited the various dynasties to bring some of their top experts and outstanding talents. With so many people going together, it would be a grand occasion. Nothing would happen. Shangguan Yu did not know whether to laugh or cry at her actions. Is smart. I'm not worried about anything you do. Since you've made up your mind, then pack up these few days and choose some people to go. Chu Luiyue nodded. When the ancient Phoenix Mountain opens, the rare treasures of heaven and earth will appear. I heard that there will be a force tide. It's an extremely rare cultivation opportunity for any cultivator. I don't want to miss it. Shangguan Yu looked at her serious expression and his heart skipped a beat. All right. Just do whatever you want to do. I'll always be behind you and support you. The Dark North dynasty sent an invitation to Chu Luiyue to bring people to Lin province to witness the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Soon, the news spread among the various sects and families. Everyone was excited and eager to go. The Dark North dynasty was an existence that had produced a god-tier expert. And the ancient Phoenix Mountain was a precious place. Which cultivator in the world did not want to go and see it? In addition, people from several other dynasties would also go together, which made it even more grand. Even if it was just a look, it would be a precious life experience. To be able to meet so many top experts and outstanding geniuses, one could imagine how lucky it was. For a moment, the list of candidates became the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone wanted to know who Chu Luiyue would choose to go with her this time. In the study of Zhaoyu Palace. Chu Luiyue was sitting behind the table, flipping through the list that she had just written. The invitation said that she could bring a total of 10 people. 5 top experts, 5 outstanding geniuses. This number was actually not a small number. After all, other than the Tianling dynasty, people from the other 3 dynasties would also go. Needless to say, there would also be people from the Dark North dynasty. Since the quota was limited, the choice of the candidates became extremely important. Chu Luiyue first drafted a list for review. On one hand, the people going had to be strong enough. On the other hand, she had to leave enough people in West Hill in case someone started to cause trouble when she was not around. Moreover, there were so many spots in total. People from various sects and aristocratic families were also keeping a close eye on them, so she had to weigh the pros and cons. She stared at the list in her hand for a long while, then picked up her pen and made a few changes on it before settling on the final list. 10 days later, the Tianling dynasty was not close to the Dark North dynasty. Even if they used the teleportation portal, it would take a few days of travel time. Therefore, it was time for them to depart after briefing her on the matters in West Hill. She turned her gaze and looked at the invitation card next to her. Her expression turned serious. Jun Jiuqing, could it be that they used to know each other? Thud. A sound suddenly came from behind her. She turned around and saw that Dumpling had accidentally knocked a few books off the bookshelf. She got up, walked over, and picked up the books. When she picked up the last book, she was about to put it back in order when she realized that it was a little different. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she flipped open the book. Immediately, a look of shock flashed across her eyes. Her handwriting was on it. However, she had no recollection of writing these things. Digression, I'm a little stuck. The 5th update is around 6:30 p.m. Originally, I wanted to add more chapters today, but I had something to do at the last minute and had to go out. So, I'll add more chapters tomorrow. Chapter 929. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and carefully flipped through the book in her hand from the first page. As she flipped through the pages, the shock and doubt in her heart increased instead of decreasing. The things written on it seemed to be chaotic and incoherent, but there was a vague pattern to it. It was like some kind of secret language. Dumpling seemed to have noticed that something was wrong. It squatted aside obediently, looking at the book for a while and looking at her for a while. Its eyes were rolling. Chu Luiyue stood there and spent quite some time before she finished reading the entire book. When she flipped to the last page, there was finally a signature that she could understand. Xin Yuan Calendar, year 3572, return at the beginning of autumn. Chu Luiyue stared at the line of words for a long time. Xin Yuan Calendar, there was no such era name in the 1,000-year history of the Tianling dynasty. Moreover, as far as she knew, some of the surrounding dynasties did not have an era as long as 3,000 years. Then, the time recorded in this sentence, whose era name did it follow, and which day did it represent? Return at the beginning of autumn, could this be referring to leaving on the day of autumn? But this was her handwriting, so where did it go? Chu Luiyue's eyes seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog, and she could not see clearly. She had a premonition that this book was most likely something like a diary. However, she couldn't remember when she had written these things down, nor did she know what the contents were. That sentence was written on the last page. Could it represent some kind of end? Chu Luiyue was puzzled. She flipped through it repeatedly, but she had no clue. This was written by her, and she should be the one who put it here. However, she had no impression of it at all. Perhaps, it has something to do with that memory, Chu Luiyue muttered softly. At this moment, there was a fluctuation in her body. This fluctuation came from the top of the Black Pyramid. The seal on it was intact, and it seemed that something inside wanted to break out. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This commotion seemed to be caused by the book in her hand. However, after a short while, the fluctuation stopped and returned to normal. Chu Luiyue stood quietly and pondered for a long time. Taizu. She suddenly spoke. Little girl, what's the matter? Taizu's voice was clearly heard. Chu Luiyue nodded. There's something I'd like to ask you. You said that the soul of the Shangguan clan was sealed in the Black Pyramid in my body? That's right. What happened? What I want to ask is, you should know who this soul belongs to, right? The Taizu suddenly fell silent. Chu Luiyue felt as if his heart had been hammered by a heavy hammer. Her lips moved as she whispered, "Don't worry. Inside is my soul, isn't it?" The study fell into a dead silence. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, Taizu did not reply for a long time. Night fell, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. It gently waved and sprinkled in through the window, outlining the slender and tall woman's long shadow. The moonlight shone on her porcelain-like face, making it half bright and half dark. Her eyelids were slightly lowered, and the expression in her eyes was dark and gloomy, like a bottomless lake, mysterious and unfathomable. The cool night breeze blew, and the corners of her clothes fluttered. After an unknown period of time, Taizu finally let out a long sigh. Actually, I'm not 100% sure, but I vaguely feel that it seems to be. Chu Luiyue was his descendant, so he was naturally the most familiar with this. When they first met, he knew that the soul of the Shangguan clan was sealed in the Black Pyramid. Otherwise, it would not have been able to break through the attack of the Long Yuan sword and enter below. At first, he only thought that it was the soul of a descendant and did not pay much attention to it. However, he gradually realized that it seemed to have something to do with Chu Luiyue. However, because he did not have any evidence, he did not tell her. He did not expect her to bring it up this time. Did you discover something? Taizu asked. Chu Luiyue nodded, then shook her head. I only caught a glimpse of the tip of the iceberg. If she had not flipped through the book and caused the Black Pyramid to move, she would not have thought of this. To think that she had been thinking that this might be an ancestor's, it's a pity that the seal on it is too strong, and I can't open it for the time being. Chu Luiyue felt a little regretful, and she suddenly felt a little unwilling and puzzled. If this guess was true, then who was the one who specially stored it in this pyramid and hid it in the imperial tomb of Yaochen? Also, the first master had said that this thing was related to his wife and was only temporarily stored with her. What was going on? Since his wife was involved, it was impossible that he did not know what was inside, right? Chu Luiyue suddenly felt an urge to see the first master again. She wanted to ask him personally what was going on in front of him. The person who left this seal is extremely powerful. Unless you break through to the 9th stage, you can only break it. Otherwise, Taizu actually had a headache. Chu Luiyue was the descendant he doted on the most. If he could help her, he would definitely help her without holding back. Chu Luiyue paused for a moment and put the book away. She would definitely solve all these mysteries. Knock knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Chu Luiyue woke up from her thoughts and walked over to open the door. The person who came was Rongxiu. At this time, it was already late at night. He was dressed in white and covered in cold moonlight. He looked at her, his eyes deep, as if they were sprinkling the sky with starlight. Chu Luiyue blinked, then reacted and reached out to pull him. Rongxiu, why are you here now? After receiving the invitation during the day, he left. She didn't expect him to come back at this time. Rongxiu held her hand and strode into the study with his long legs. I'm here to bid you farewell, said Rongxiu straightforwardly. Chu Luiyue asked in surprise. Now? Where are you going? Rongxiu's lips curled up into a smile as he nonchalantly said, something happened in the clan and I need to go back to deal with it. So he was going back to his mother's clan. Chu Luiyue felt as if a piece of her heart had been dug out. The two of them were separated more than they were together. It wasn't easy for them to be together for a month, but they were going to be separated again. Perhaps the disappointment in her eyes was too obvious. Rongxiu tucked the strands of hair by her cheeks behind her ears, cupped her face, and planted a kiss on it. Don't worry, I'll go to the Dark North Dynasty to find you soon. Chu Luiyue hugged his thin waist and said in a muffled voice. Really? Rong Xiu pinched her white and delicate earlobe and laughed softly, but his tone was gentle and doting. Of course. Someone was arrogant and presumptuous. How could he sit back and do nothing? When the time comes, I'll give you a big gift. Digression, tomorrow is the diligent February. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 930. 3 days later, Chu Luyue selected her entourage and set off from Pingliang Square. There were a total of 10 people going with her this time. 5 of them were young talents from various families: Jian Fengqi, Yuan Jingheng, Mu Hongyu, Chang Wanzhou, and Wu Ming from Tianji residence. The other 5 were the most powerful people in Xiling: Chen Ku and Su Jin, the 2 elders from the royal family, Elder Xiai, Elder Xiao Ran from Xingyan Palace, and Qin Yi. Of course, Qin Yi had already returned to his original name, Sun Yi. General Meng, after I leave, I'll leave Xiling to you. Chu Luyue said to Meng Jingji solemnly. Meng Jingji cupped his fists. Don't worry, Your Majesty. He swore loyalty to the Tianling dynasty, so he would naturally do his best to keep this place safe. Chu Luyue nodded and felt a little more at ease. She trusted Meng Jingji's character. Ever since the last big reshuffle, many positions in Xiling City had become vacant. For example, the Black Cavalry had lost their deputy general, Mu Qinghe, and they were like dragons without a leader. As for many other aspects, they were more or less lacking. This time, she had brought Elder Chen Ku and the others with her to the Dark North Dynasty. This would undoubtedly lower the defense of the Western Hill. At this time, Meng Jingji was the best candidate to stabilize the situation. He had been able to suppress Xizjiang for many years, so it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with this. The most important thing was that he was indeed loyal to the Tianling dynasty. Don't worry. I'll definitely help you guard this place well. Shengguan Yu said firmly. Chu Luyue nodded. Although father is now the retired emperor, he has been on the throne for many years and is better at controlling these things than I am. She really had nothing to worry about. Please take care, father. We'll leave now. After Chu Luyue finished speaking, she nodded at the person beside her. The transportation array started to spin slowly. Shengguan Yu stepped forward. Be careful. I'll wait for your safe return. Chu Luyue nodded vigorously at Shengguan Yu. A strong light flashed. Everyone's figures instantly disappeared from the spot. Shengguan Yu looked at the empty square with a solemn expression. I hope that everything will go smoothly this time. After entering the teleportation array, the surroundings were pitch black. Elder Chen Ku took out a water pearl and lit up the space they were in. I wonder how long this trip will take us, Mu Hongyu muttered curiously. It'll take about 5 days. We'll pass through 4 transportation array formations. Yuzu. Yayu, isn't that further than the Great Desolate Swamp? She was Yayu's. The Tianling dynasty is very far from there, and the Biming dynasty is about twice the size of the Tianling dynasty. Even if we reach their border, it'll take a lot of time to get to Lin province. I see. So this Biming dynasty seems to be very powerful? Mu Hongyu wasn't from the Tianling dynasty, so she didn't know much about the Tianling dynasty, let alone the Biming dynasty. She only learned a little about it after knowing that she was going with them. Before Chu Luyue could say anything, Jian Fengqi chuckled and said lazily, There's a divine god in the Tianling dynasty. There's a great ancestor who's ascended to the god realm, so of course they think highly of themselves. Chu Luyue touched his eyebrows and smiled. This is a fact. Among the surrounding empires, there aren't many who have stepped into the godly realm. The Dark North Empire is considered one of the best. It's a powerful empire with countless experts. No one can deny that. Who knows how many people want to join in the fun when the ancient Phoenix Mountain opens. It was a surprise that the Tianling dynasty was invited. Not to mention Dark North Empire, even the other 3 empires that were invited were not weak either. If it were in the past, they might have been able to compete. However, the Tianling dynasty had just gone through a shocking change. Countless people were implicated and punished. It could be said that the Tianling dynasty's vitality was greatly damaged. Therefore, among the 5 dynasties, the Tianling dynasty was expected to be at the bottom. However, Chu Luyue didn't care much about that. She had come here mainly to rescue Chu Ning, and at the same time, to see what Jun Jiuqing was up to. Your Majesty is right. The ancient Phoenix Mountain is the place where the Taizu of the Biming dynasty successfully broke through to level 9. It's now regarded as a sacred mountain because there are many rare treasures buried there, and there's a lot of origin power stored there. It's very beneficial to one's cultivation if you can go in and explore. This is a rare opportunity. You must seize it. Elder Chen Ku said earnestly to Jian Fengqi and the others. Although he didn't know why the Biming dynasty suddenly invited them, it was still a rare opportunity. Chu Luyue nodded and teased with a smile. I've been a princess for 20 years, but I've never encountered such an opportunity. Mu Hongyu asked curiously. Lu, Your Majesty, will you be coming with us this time? Chu Luyue knocked on her head. Just call me by my previous name. It's awkward to hear Your Majesty all the time. Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. In fact, it took her a lot of effort to accept Chu Luyue's true identity. Previously, she thought that they couldn't be like before because of their different identities. She was upset about it for a few days. Now that she heard her words, she was delighted. Then I'll call you that in private from now on, okay? Lu Yu said that he didn't mind, but she had to think about Lu Yu. After all, he was the emperor of the Tianling dynasty. He couldn't be the same as before. Chu Luyue nodded with a smile. Okay. As for whether I'll come with you this time, it's not too late to decide when we get there. After passing through 3 transportation formations, they finally arrived at the border of the Biming dynasty. A huge transparent curtain fell from the sky. Why do they have a heaven's canopy here? Mu Hongyu murmured. That's not a heaven's canopy. It's a barrier built by a Xian formation, Elder Chen Ku said in a deep voice. Mu Hongyu widened her almond-shaped eyes in shock. She had never seen a barrier of such a scale before. This is the pressure of a level 9 Xian formation, and there's definitely more than one. It's clearly formed by several connected formations. Elder Su Jin was the only female among the royal elders. She looked to be in her 30s. She was graceful and charming, but her personality was a little cold. But now, she couldn't help but be amazed. The Biming dynasty really lives up to its name. She wasn't interested in other things, but she was obsessed with Xian formations. For a high-level Xian formation, she often studied it obsessively and didn't rest for dozens of days. Now that she suddenly saw such a formation, she naturally couldn't hide her excitement. She quickly patted Chu Luyue's arm. It's rare to see a level 9 Xian formation. You have to take a look at it this time. Later, I'll rely on you to draw it for Master to study. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 931. Chu Luyue coughed. Master Su Jin, please restrain yourself. Elder Su Jin used to be one of her masters as a mystic cultivator. Back then, she was extremely obsessed with these things, but she didn't expect it to be even more so now. Hey, don't you always have a photographic memory of mystic formations? Just take it as Master begging you, okay? Elder Su Jin put her palms together and gave Chu Luyue a fawning smile, without any trace of her previous cold aura. This, Su Jin, if you really want to see it, I can also help you. How about we each memorize a portion? Xiao Ran, who had been very silent, couldn't help but speak up. His eyes were filled with eagerness as he looked at Elder Su Jin with an exceptionally gentle gaze. Elder Su Jin waved her hand and refused without even turning her head. No way, how can you and I remember it as clearly as you, Disappointment flashed across Xiao Ran's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. In the end, she still looked at the barrier and memorized it diligently. Even if it was just a little help, it would be good, Chu Lua snickered inwardly. Xiao Ran was the #1 elder of Holy Flame Palace and also the strongest person in their sect. His status and prestige were even higher than the palace master of Holy Flame Palace. He had pursued Elder Su Jin for 20 years but had never succeeded. She didn't expect that he still hadn't given up until now. Don't worry, Master Su Jin, I'll remember it. However, if I want to study it thoroughly, I might have to ask Elder Xiao Ran for help occasionally. Xiao Ran glanced at Chu Luyue gratefully. How could Elder Su Jin not know Chu Luyue's thoughts? She tapped her nose. Sly. You were a level 8 mystic cultivator back then, what do you mean you don't understand? Chu Luyue shrugged. Unfortunately, I'm not one now. Jian Fengqi finally couldn't help but glance at her. You have nothing to do with the word modest. Please wake up. Although she no longer had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, this wouldn't affect her talent as a mystic cultivator. After so many years, the most talented mystic cultivator he had seen was Chu Luyue. Otherwise, Elder Su Jin wouldn't have asked her for help. Chu Luyue had a rare moment of embarrassment and surrendered with both hands. Okay. Give me 15 minutes. After she finished speaking, she raised her head and looked at the intersecting profound formations in front of her. The people around her also quieted down immediately. They followed her and watched while waiting for her to speak. TSK, a disdainful sneer came from behind them. These days, there are really all kinds of arrogant people. This barrier was jointly created by several level 9 mystic cultivators of the Biming dynasty over a year. Ordinary people would feel dizzy just by looking at it a few more times. Yet, he actually wanted to memorize it completely. What a joke. Elder Su Jin and the others turned their heads to look, and saw that there was a group of people arriving right after them. The other party also had 11 people. The one who spoke was a young woman who looked to be in her 20s. She had a delicate appearance and was dressed in luxurious clothes. However, there was a hint of arrogance between her eyebrows. Elder Chenku glanced at her before his gaze landed on the middle-aged man standing at the front. He had an ordinary face with a full beard and looked rather dignified. There were dragon patterns on his sleeves and the corners of his clothes, making his identity clear. Ruoli, don't be rude. The middle-aged man seemed to be reprimanding her, but his tone was still very gentle. It was obvious that he doted on this woman. The woman snorted. I'm just speaking the truth. I just can't stand some people putting on an act. Could it be that there really is someone in this world who can memorize a level 9 mystic formation with just one look? The middle-aged man didn't reprimand her again. It was obvious that he had the same thoughts as her. He shook his head with a helpless smile. When can you change your straightforward personality? Your Majesty, the eldest princess is right. We've just arrived at the border of the Biming dynasty and she's already like this. Who knows how much worse it will be when we reach Lin province. A purple-robed young man helped to speak up. The middle-aged man shook his head. Be that as it may, the Biming dynasty is someone else's territory after all. You should all restrain yourselves. No matter what, the other party was invited here just like us. Why make things awkward? With that, he looked at Chu Luyue and the others again. Elder Chenku stepped forward. Chenku of the Tianling dynasty greets Emperor Huairan of the Taiyu dynasty. Tan Taichen looked at him in surprise, then smiled politely. So it's Elder Chenku of the Tianling dynasty. You know me? Elder Chenku's expression was calm. You came to Tianling 43 years ago. At that time, this old man had the chance to meet you. Tan Taichen's expression froze. He went to the Tianling dynasty that time for a marriage alliance. At that time, the Taiyu dynasty was slightly weaker than the Tianling dynasty. That was why he wanted to marry them. Unfortunately, he was rejected in the end. Since then, he felt humiliated and never went to Tianling again. Over the past few decades, the Taiyu dynasty's overall strength had surpassed Tianling. In addition to the things that happened in Tianling some time ago, they were naturally no match for them. I see. I don't remember these things clearly. He didn't pay attention to Elder Chen Ku at that time. After so many years, he naturally didn't remember him. However, I didn't know that the Tianling dynasty would come for the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain this time. Tan Taichen smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I thought that you would be busy recently. There was a hint of mockery in his words. Elder Chen Ku's brows furrowed slightly. Soon after, he began to laugh. You're right. We've been busy recently, but since the Biming dynasty sent an invitation, we naturally have to show some respect. There's no reason for us not to come. In other words, they were invited by the Biming dynasty just like the Taiyu dynasty. Since they were all the same, there was no need to differentiate between them. Tan Taichen choked. His face was a little gloomy. He really didn't know that the Tianling dynasty would be invited. Logically speaking, the current Tianling dynasty didn't seem to have the right to be invited. However, only the people of the Biming dynasty knew the answer to that. The Tianling dynasty? Is that the heavenly fate princess that's been making a lot of noise recently? Tantai Ruoli asked. She deliberately emphasized the words, heavenly fate princess. Back then, the news that the Tianling dynasty had a Tianjing Yuan meridian spread like wildfire. It was as if it was something amazing to have such a genius. Later, they also heard a lot about the heavenly fate princess. Most people talked about how outstanding she was. Who knew that in the end, she would be framed by her own fiancé and sister? How could she still be called the heavenly fate princess? It was just a joke. Elder Chen Ku heard her sarcasm and mockery. His expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to retort, Chu Luiyue had already retracted her gaze. She turned to look at them and smiled. Thank you for your concern. However, I'm no longer the heavenly fate princess. I'm the Tianling Emperor, Yuan Shi. Eldest Princess Tantai, please call me Emperor Yuan Shi. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 932. Although there was a smile on her lips, her black jade-like eyes were clear and cold. It was enough to send chills down one's spine. Tantai Ruoli and Chu Luiyue looked at each other and felt a chill run down their spines. In that instant, it was as if they had been completely seen through. The faint majestic aura emanating from the other party actually caused her to feel fear. This was the true aura of an emperor. Although the Tianling dynasty was no match for Taiyu, Chu Luiyue was the emperor and Tantai Ruoli was the princess. There was a clear difference in status between the two of them. According to the rules, I am on the same level as Emperor Huiran. You should pay your respects to me when you see me. However, seeing that Tianling and Taiyu have dealings with each other and both of you are here in the Biming dynasty, I'll let you off the hook. Chu Luiyue spoke casually. However, every word of his was using his status to suppress Tantai Ruoli. However, when you enter the Biming dynasty and meet other people, I hope that eldest Princess Tantai will remember your status clearly. Otherwise, if you make a fool of yourself again, it might bring you a lot of trouble. Tantai Ruoli opened her mouth and wanted to retort, but her throat was so tight that she couldn't spit out a single word. Her chest felt unbearably tight. Her status was indeed a level lower than the other parties. Father. She stomped her feet and looked at Tan Taichen for help. Tan Taichen frowned and looked at her. That's enough, Ruoli. It didn't matter how willful she was usually, but now that they were in someone else's territory, she couldn't be so impudent. Although Chu Luiyue's words were unpleasant, they weren't without reason. Seeing that her father, who had always doted on her, wasn't speaking up for her, Tantai Ruoli could only obediently keep her mouth shut. However, she resented Chu Luiyue even more in her heart. Was he the emperor of Tianling? What was there to be proud of? How could the current Tianling compare to them? I'll teach her a lesson when we get to Linzhou. Chu Luiyue looked at the people around him. Let's go. Elder Su Jin's eyes lit up. Since she said so, it proved that she had already finished looking through all the Xian formations. Although he had changed his body, his talent did not decrease at all. Instead, it seemed to have become even stronger. Good. Let's go. Don't delay it because of some irrelevant people and things. The expressions of Tan Tai Chen and the others changed slightly. They didn't look good. These words were obviously referring to them. However, Chu Luiyue and the others clearly didn't care about their reactions. They didn't even spare them a glance. They walked forward. The soldier guarding the Xian formation said in a deep voice, "Please show me your invitation." Chu Luiyue took out the invitation card. With a slight movement of his finger, the invitation card flew out and landed on the barrier formed by the profound formation. Wang! A ripple spread out in all directions with the invitation card as the center. In the next moment, the barrier opened from the middle. One of the teleportation arrays inside was already starting to rotate slowly. Let's go. Chu Luiyue shouted and the few of them disappeared in an instant. That Sheng Guanyu is so arrogant. Seeing that they had left, Tantai Ruoli couldn't help but laugh coldly. The rumors about her in the past were all very mysterious. If she was really that powerful, why would she be harmed in the past? I don't know how she came back and ascended to the throne, but she's so arrogant. Does she really think that she's invincible? That's right. She even said that she would memorize the level 9 Xian formation on the barrier in 15 minutes. What a joke. Even if she has a photographic memory, this profound formations level is extremely high, and it's extremely complicated. How could she remember it all? The young man beside him quickly agreed. Ruoli, it's not worth getting angry over this kind of person. When we get to Linzhou, we'll expose her in front of everyone. Let's see how arrogant she can be. Tantai Ruoli rolled his eyes and smiled. That's a good idea. Those who came to Linzhou this time are the most powerful people in each dynasty. When the time comes, she'll definitely be humiliated. Tan Taichen didn't comment on that. In fact, he didn't like that Sheng Guanyu's words and actions. In addition, he had some grudges against the Tianling dynasty. Naturally, he didn't want to be on good terms with them now. He turned around, glanced at them, and said faintly, "Don't worry. These are all small matters. You just have to be careful. Don't forget that the most important thing this time is to wait for the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Ruoli, especially you're only one step away from becoming a level 8 warrior. You don't have to take this opportunity to break through. If you can get a great opportunity and go up a few levels, then your future will be limitless." Tantai Ruoli patted her chest confidently. "Father, don't worry. This time, I'll make you proud. I'll let them know who the top genius is." Tan Taichen nodded in satisfaction. "Let's go." They entered from the boundary at the border. This was the last teleportation array. From here, they could reach Linzhou directly. After waiting for a while, a light spot finally appeared in the darkness ahead. Elder Chenku said in a deep voice, "We're almost there." As soon as he said that, the atmosphere suddenly changed subtly. Some were nervous, and some were looking forward to it. After all, none of them had been to the Biming dynasty before, let alone Linzhou. When they thought about the competition with the people from the other dynasties, they couldn't help but feel excited. The light in front of them became brighter and brighter until a strong pressure came from all directions. A group of people rushed out of the teleportation array one after another. The light flashed in front of them, and they finally felt that they were stepping on solid ground. Chu Luiyue stood still and looked ahead. A majestic city stood in front of them. Behind it, there was an endless mountain range, like a giant beast lying on the ground. Its aura was astonishing. Even though he was standing so far away, he could still clearly feel that terrifying pressure. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. That's the ancient Phoenix Mountain. At the same time, in the Biming Palace, In the blue lake, a small boat floated gently. On top of it, a person was reclining, looking carefree and unfettered. A gentle breeze blew. He chuckled, seeming to be a little drunk. His voice was hoarse and decadent, like a hook that tickled people's hearts. It's finally here. Digression. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 933. As his voice fell, he pushed the boat with one hand and his figure floated up like a swan. The indigo brocade robe drew an arc in the air. From afar, it looked like an elegant ink painting, reflecting the sky and the water. However, the trace of red at the end of his hair was a strong and bright stroke, as if it wanted to break free from this tranquil and peaceful painting. Coo coo, a strange bird's cry was heard. In the sky, there was a white bird that was flying over at high speed. The bird was not big, and its body was snow-white. Only its claws and head were ink-black. It should have looked soft and cute, but it had a sharp red beak and sharp and cold eyes, which added a bit of fierceness to it. It flapped its wings and landed directly on Jun Jiuqing's right arm. "You're too late. I already know." He laughed in a low voice. He naturally knew that she was coming the fastest. From the moment she walked out of the teleportation array and arrived at Lin City, he already knew. These words seemed to make the bird a little disappointed, and the fierceness in its eyes became stronger. "All right, I's in a good mood today. I will give you the reward you deserve." Hearing his words, the bird became excited again. It flapped its wings anxiously, as if it could not wait. Jun Jiuqing tilted his head slightly and said lazily, "Go and bring a beginner of the 7th rank for it." Soon, a guard appeared by the lake and respectfully knelt on one knee. "Yes. By the way, throw away the previous ones. Kill a fresh one for it today." The guard was a little surprised, but it seemed that this was not the first time he had experienced such a thing. He immediately reacted. "This subordinate obeys." Coo coo, only then did the bird call eagerly and fawningly. With a shake of Jun Jiuqing's arm, it flew into the air. Soon, the figure of the guard and the bird disappeared without a trace. Jun Jiuqing stood quietly on the boat with one hand behind his back for a moment. "Men." 2 guards ran out together. "Your Highness, what orders do you have? How are the preparations for the things I asked you to do?" "Don't worry, Your Highness. This subordinate has prepared everything." "That's fine." A distinguished guest had arrived, so naturally, they had to receive him well. As Jun Jiuqing spoke, he raised his head slightly and looked in a certain direction. "You really made I wait for too long." After Chu Luiyue came out, the others also came out one after another. Looking around, there was a group of armored soldiers guarding the area around the teleportation array plaza. 2 men stood in front of the teleportation array. One was tall and muscular, while the other was slightly skinny. The 2 of them stood side by side, but one of them was stronger than the other. They were clearly wearing the same official robes, but the thinner man was clearly shorter than the burly man next to him. It looked like they were waiting for someone. After Chu Luiyue and the others came out, the 2 of them looked over. Shock flashed across the duo's eyes when they saw Chu Luiyue, who was standing right in front of the group. Even the soldiers guarding the teleportation array could not help but take a few more glances at her. There were countless beautiful women in the world. However, there were very few who were as beautiful and noble as this woman. Needless to say, her facial features were perfect, but the most moving thing was the aura between her eyebrows. She was cold and bright, with an unattainable noble aura. At first glance, she was as bright as the sun in the clouds, but at second glance, she was as beautiful as the cold moon. She was truly a beauty that could topple cities. After a moment, the burly man reacted first, and an eager smile appeared on his face. However, before the smile could fully spread, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his expression froze. His expression changed very quickly, but Chu Luiyue still saw it clearly. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The man spoke hesitantly. I am Yin Hao, and I have been ordered to wait here. May I ask if you are all from the Tianling dynasty? Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. I am from the Tianling Shengguanyu. A look of, I knew it, flashed across the man's eyes. Then, the smile on his face reappeared, but it was much more polite and distant, and the smile did not reach the corners of his eyes. Honorable guests, you have come from afar, and I apologize for not welcoming you. Wen Fan, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and invite our honorable guests into the city. The thin man next to him glanced at him, as if he wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words in the end. Then, he took a few steps forward and bowed respectfully to Chu Luiyue and the others. I am Wen Fan, and I will be in charge of all your matters in Lin City this time. If you have any questions, please let me know. So, he was in charge of receiving the guests. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. The person who was sent to do this must have a high status in the Biming dynasty. However, judging from the situation just now, Yin Hao seemed to be much more powerful than Wen Fan. Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. All right. Then, I will have to trouble Lord Wen for a period of time. Wen Fan did not expect Chu Luiyue to be so polite. He was flattered and quickly waved his hand. You are too kind. This is what I should do. His Highness the Crown Prince has already made arrangements for your accommodations. Please follow me into the city gates. Chu Luiyue looked calm and nodded slightly. The other party had come for her from the beginning, so it was not surprising that they had prepared these accommodations in advance. She did not say much, but called out to Elder Chen Ku and the others. The group then followed Wen Fan to the city gate. However, as soon as they stepped out of the teleportation formation, there was another fluctuation behind them. Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. As expected, Tan Taichen and the others had arrived. Yin Hao saw them and immediately went to greet them happily. Emperor Huairan, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Tan Taichen looked at him. You are, Yin Hao bowed respectfully, his face full of eagerness. My name is Yin Hao. I'm here to take care of all your affairs in Linzhou City. His Majesty said that you will not be here for a long time, and he misses you very much. He even wants to play a game of chess with you. Tan Taichen finally understood and laughed. Me too. Since I am here this time, I will have a good time. Yin Hao raised his arm. This way please. After that, he bowed and led the way in front. I thought that he was a powerful person just now, but it turns out that he is just a servant who is used to judging others. Mu Hongyu said with disdain. Yin Hao saw them just now, and he was very cold and noble. It was difficult for him to even smile. Now that he saw Tan Taichen and the others, he was completely different. Aren't you afraid that your mouth will crack from smiling? Chu Luiyue smiled carelessly. There is nothing strange about that. Our Tianling is indeed a little inferior to the current Taiyu. If we can get on their good side, we will naturally benefit a lot. She turned her gaze and looked at Wen Fan. This person seemed to be used to being bullied. Digression, I am a little stuck, and I will take my time to grind it out. Later on, it will be slower. Everyone, please show your impatience. Chapter 934. Don't worry about them. Let's go first. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and walked forward. When Wen Fan heard this, he hurriedly reacted and led the way in front. This way, please. Below the square, there were 2 teams on each side of the square. They seemed to be here to pick people up. There were several carriages in each team. The one in front was the most luxurious. The ones behind it were slightly less luxurious, but they were still very luxurious compared to ordinary carriages. There was a totem engraved on each of the carriages. They were obviously prepared by the Biming royal family. There were 2 top-notch carriages at the very front, both of which were pulled by 8 blue-scaled horses. The blue-scaled horses were 7th-grade magical beasts. They were considered to be of high quality, so they were very valuable. The fact that the Biming dynasty could send so many of them to pull the carriages showed how powerful their country was. What was slightly different was that among the 8 blue scale horses on the left, one of them had an extremely pure color. Under the sunlight, it actually shone like an azure sea. It was obviously about to break through. Of course, it was more valuable than the others. Wen Fan was about to walk to the team on the left when Yin Hao's voice came from behind him. Wen Fan, are you going to sit in the team on the right? Although it was a question, his tone was clearly in order. Wen Fan frowned. He turned around to look at him and said, according to the numbers, the team on the left is number 4, and the one on the right is number 5. We should be sitting in number 4. Yin Hao, however, laughed out loud. Isn't it just a number? The first 3 teams have already left. There are only 2 teams left. What's there to split? We'll take the one on the left. Wen Fan was a little angry. He had tolerated him before, but now he wanted to snatch the carriages. He didn't care if he was bullied, but if he backed down now, wouldn't he drag the people of the Tianling dynasty down with him? His voice became colder. Yin Hao, we all know the principle of first come, first served. Moreover, the people of the Tianling dynasty came first. Naturally, you should sit in number 4. Yin Hao was refuted in front of everyone. He felt that he had lost face and his face turned ugly. Didn't you hear what I said just now? His Majesty is waiting to play chess and catch up with Emperor Huairan. If it's delayed, can you bear the responsibility? Wen Fan sneered in his heart. Their mission today was to pick up the people here and settle them down. If he wanted to see His Majesty, he had to wait until tomorrow. Using this as an excuse, he was clearly trying to snatch the item. No. It's just a group of carriages, what's there to fight over? Since Emperor Huairan is in a hurry, then this consort will take a step back. Before Wen Fan could finish his words, Chu Luyue, who was beside him, smiled and spoke. Because of this sentence, a crack appeared in the originally hostile atmosphere. Everyone turned to look at him. Who couldn't tell that the fight for the carriage was a fight for status? Was she really going to admit defeat so easily? Wen Fan could not help but remind him in a low voice. Do you really want to do this? Chu Luyue didn't seem to care about the gazes around him. Her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled brightly. That's right. Anyway, we're not in a hurry today, so what's the harm in taking a step back? We're all here for the invitation, so isn't it good to be happy? Why make things unpleasant over such a small matter? After hearing this, everyone felt that Chu Luyue was really afraid of Taiyu dynasty, which was why she was willing to compromise. For a moment, a trace of disdain appeared on many people's faces. They had heard that the Tianling dynasty had suffered a great loss, and now it seemed that it was true. They hadn't even officially entered Linzhou city, and they were already being bullied like this. Wouldn't they be trampled on in the future? This Shangguan, you didn't seem like a good person. Tan Taichen smiled and cupped his hands. Then this consort will thank you in advance. Chu Luyue smiled and nodded, as if she really didn't care. Then, Tan Taichen led his people to the 4th carriage. Tan Tai Ruoli sneered and glanced at Chu Luyue disdainfully when she brushed past her. Pfft, it seems that some people really don't understand that even if they're all emperors, there's still a difference between them. Shangguan, you didn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as them. Chang Wanzhou's wrist twitched slightly, as if he was about to attack. Chu Luyue glanced at them and signaled them to calm down. The silent and oppressive atmosphere made them even more sullen. Wen Fan looked apologetic and said in a low voice, I'm sorry. It's all my fault for being too incompetent. Chu Luyue shook her head and walked toward the carriage on the right. Let's go too. Tan Taichen and the others quickly reached the most luxurious carriage. Just as he was about to get in, he heard a clear voice again. Emperor Huairan, please wait. Tan Taichen turned his head and saw Chu Luyue standing beside the carriage and looking over with a smile. This consort has never been to Lin province before and has never met anyone from the Dark North Imperial family. This time, Emperor Huairan wants to meet the Dark North Emperor first to play chess and chat with him. For the sake of this carriage, please introduce this consort to him and put in a few good words. This way, when we officially meet in the future, this consort can have a few more words with him. Tan Taichen was stunned. He didn't say that he would enter the palace today. After all, the Dark North Emperor's status was slightly higher than his, and he wasn't someone he could meet just because he wanted to. Now that Shangguanyu said this, wouldn't it be inappropriate if he didn't go today? But, this carriage had already been snatched. He vaguely felt that he had jumped into the trap that the other party had dug. He couldn't jump, but he also couldn't not jump. Digression, I'm not sure about the time. Sorry. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 935. Tan Taichen was inwardly annoyed. This Shangguanyu might look harmless on the surface, but who knew that she was full of evil tricks? The moment she said those words, she left him with no way out. Her meaning was clear. When she met the Dark North Emperor, she would definitely bring up today's matter. Although it felt good to snatch a good carriage, it wouldn't be nice if others knew about it. Tan Taichen gritted his teeth. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Chu Luiyue blinked and teased him with a half-smile. What? Is Emperor Huairan unwilling to help with such a small matter? Tan Taichen had no choice but to say, why would I? It's just a small matter. I'll help if I can. However, I'm not feeling well today. Whether I'll go to the palace to meet you is another matter. Yin Hao hurriedly said Emperor Huairan must be exhausted from the long journey, right? I'll send you to your residence to rest first. With this excuse, Tan Taichen's expression improved. He nodded and boarded the carriage. When the curtain fell, it blocked the view of Chu Luiyue and the others. Tan Taichen heaved a sigh of relief. He leaned against the wall of the carriage and frowned in annoyance. This Shangguanyu doesn't seem to be as easy to deal with as it seems. After these two confrontations, the two sides could be considered to have formed a grudge. Today, she made a fuss about the carriage incident. Who knows what she'll do in the future? It's better to be on guard. After Tan Taichen boarded the carriage, Tan Tai Ruoli and the others also boarded the carriages behind. Let's go. At Yin Hao's command, the carriages drove toward the city gate. However, no matter how one looked at it, it seemed like they were fleeing. Wen Fan looked at Chu Luiyue in surprise. Although the new emperor of the Tianling dynasty looked to be only 16 or 17 years old, she seemed to be quite scheming and resourceful. She was able to talk and laugh in front of so many people and force that old fox Tan Taichen to the point of speechlessness. Normal people couldn't do that. He couldn't help but change his opinion of Chu Luiyue. His attitude became more respectful, and he wanted to apologize with an apologetic expression. I'm to blame for this matter. It's not your fault. Chu Luiyue glanced at the carriage in the distance and smiled faintly. They're just trying to intimidate me. Without Tan Taichen's connivance, Yin Hao would not dare to rob her openly no matter how arrogant he was. Unfortunately, I don't fall for that trick. This time, she would give them a small counterattack. If Tan Taichen was tactful and behaved himself, she would let it go. But if they didn't, when that time comes, they would. All right, let's get going. Chu Luiyue said as she got into the carriage. Elder Chen Ku and the others got into the carriage one after another. Then, she lifted the curtain and glanced at Wen Fan. By the way, since we're in Lin City, you'll be in charge of all our affairs. Then, I have a request. Wen Fan straightened his body subconsciously and asked respectfully, please say it. Wen Fan will do his best. Chu Luiyue's red lips curled slightly. It's not a difficult request. But if the same thing happens again, you don't have to worry. Just fight back. I'll bear the consequences. She came to Linzhou City to rescue her father from the tiger's den, not to be wronged and bullied by others. Wen Fan was startled by the coldness between her eyebrows. Suddenly he felt as if he had eaten a tranquilizer in his heart. Yes. Chu Liuyue's lips curved into a smile as she looked up at the towering city gate in the distance. Let's go. After passing through the city gate, the carriages continued to move forward. Tan Taichen sat in the carriage with his eyes closed, deep in thought. Gradually, he heard all kinds of noises around him. It was very lively. They must have entered a bustling city. However, the noises made Tan Taichen even more frustrated. He wanted to relax and have a good rest in the carriage, but the scene just now kept replaying in his mind. He was checkmated by a mere Shengguanyu. He felt so aggrieved no matter how he thought about it. Initially, he only wanted to teach them a lesson and let them know who they could and could not afford to offend. However, he didn't expect that Shengguanyu would take advantage of the situation to make a fuss. Before he even got into the carriage, she had already thought of a way to complain to the Dark North Emperor in front of everyone. If he had known, he wouldn't have snatched the carriage. What a waste of time. At this moment, the carriage finally stopped. Yin Hao's voice came from outside. Your Majesty, we've arrived. You may get off the carriage. Tan Taichen shook his head and threw the messy content to the back of his mind. Then, he lifted the curtain and got off the carriage. After he stood still, he raised his head and looked in front of him. When he saw the situation in front of him, he was surprised. This is, Your Majesty, this is the resting place that the Crown Prince ordered for all of you to prepare. Yin Hao said with a fawning expression. This time, we prepared a total of 4 courtyards in the palace. Each of the 4 great empires will live in one. However, this is the most spacious and luxurious of the 4 courtyards. Back then, there were quite a few ancestors who had lived here. Not to mention, the Crown Prince personally ordered people to renovate it a few years ago. This place can be said to be the best one. When Tan Taichen saw the extraordinarily luxurious door, he already knew that this courtyard was extraordinary. When he heard this, he couldn't hide his excitement. This is the Crown Prince's special place for me? Of course. Yin Hao smiled fawningly. If it wasn't specially designated, those who came earlier would have already moved in. Obviously, this place was reserved for the Taiyu dynasty. In fact, the 2 dynasties that came earlier were stronger than the Taiyu dynasty. Unfortunately, he couldn't beat the other 2 and had to compete with Wen Fan in the end. He didn't expect this place to be reserved for them by the Crown Prince. This was really a stroke of luck. Although Yin Hao didn't know why the Crown Prince would do this, he was still very happy. As long as he could serve them well, he would be able to achieve great things in the future. Please, Yin Hao said eagerly. Tan Taichen looked calm. However, the slight smile on his face and the expectant look in his eyes revealed that he was very excited and happy about this matter. Normally, an emperor wouldn't be too interested in the place where other emperors lived before. However, this place was different. This was the courtyard where the emperor of the Biming dynasty lived before. To him, this was no doubt an intangible honor. If he could live in this courtyard, he would be respected in front of the other empires. He straightened his clothes and walked forward with his head held high. However, he was stopped when he reached the door. Clang! 2 spears crossed each other. The guard in charge of guarding the door said coldly, I'm sorry, this place is not reserved for you. Digression, translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 936. How dare you? Yin Hao's expression changed when he saw the situation, and he shouted. Do you know who is standing here? However, the 2 guards' expressions did not change. They were still expressionless. The residence of the Taiyu dynasty is on the street next door, not here. Yin Hao choked. They knew Tan Taichen's identity. But they were still so insistent. Could it be impossible? You must have made a mistake. Yin Hao stepped forward and tried to argue. There were 4 courtyards in total. The first two were already occupied, so there were only two left. As for the remaining two, it was obvious that this place was better. Only the people from the Taiyu dynasty and the Tianling dynasty had not moved in yet. Wasn't it obvious who should live in the better courtyards? However, these two guards were in charge of guarding the courtyards. They were not weak and were not afraid of Yin Hao. Master Yin, we are just following orders. Please don't make things difficult for us. Yin Hao wanted to say more, but Tan Taichen could not help but laugh and speak. Say, if this place isn't for the Taiyu dynasty to live in, could it be for the Tianling dynasty to live in? As his voice fell, the two guards actually nodded in unison. That's right. Tan Taichen's remaining words were stuck in his throat. Even Yin Hao's mouth was agape, as if he had swallowed an egg. What? It seems like this place is for me. Just as both sides fell into dead silence, a familiar voice came from behind them. The few of them turned around and saw Chu Luiyue lightly jump down from the horse carriage. The street was wide enough for two carriages to travel side by side. Therefore, their carriage stopped beside Tan Taichen's carriage. Chu Luiyue and the others had heard their conversation clearly. She leaned against the carriage and crossed her arms. Her lips curled into an evil smile. She was born with good looks, and this smile of hers was even more beautiful, moving one's heart. What nonsense are you talking about? At this point, Tantai Ruoli had also heard those words. When she saw Chu Luiyue's smile, she felt that it was very ironic. She hurriedly walked to the door and hollered at the two guards. Orders? Whose orders are you following? The two guards frowned and glanced at her. Of course it's on the Crown Prince's orders. For the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain this time, the invitations from the few great empires were all handled by the Crown Prince. Naturally, the accommodation arrangements were no exception. The Crown Prince had specifically instructed that this was for the Tianling dynasty. After saying that, the two guards bowed to Chu Luiyue. They were much more respectful and polite. His Highness the Crown Prince said that you can rest assured and stay here. If you need anything, just ask. This attitude, compared to just now, was like heaven and earth. Chu Luiyue rubbed her chin. The smile on her lips deepened, and she immediately walked forward. Her well-tailored and exquisite boots fell on the ground, making a rhythmic sound. It was like a heavy hammer, hitting the hearts of Tan Taichen and the others. She walked to the front of the door and stood beside the few people. Immediately, she seemed to blink her eyes in embarrassment. So it's really for me? I thought you were joking just now. Look at this. How embarrassing is this? Huiran Emperor, I didn't want to fight with you for this. Please don't misunderstand. As she spoke, she glanced at Tan Taichen. Sigh, it wasn't easy to come here. In the end, we still have to return to another street. How troublesome. Everyone, I'm really sorry. If we had arrived first, we might not have made such a joke. Tan Taichen felt like he had been slapped in the face. They were the ones who had snatched the carriage first, but now they had clearly shot themselves in the foot. They had lost all face. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have made such an unnecessary move. Tantai Ruoli couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't help but sneer and look at the two guards. You said this was the Crown Prince's order. Do you have any evidence? Don't tell me you guys acted on your own and did it on purpose. The moment she said that, the aura around the two guards became dangerous. Even Yin Hao couldn't help but complain. Did this Tantai Ruoli have a brain? Not to mention Lin province, even in the entire Baiming dynasty, no one dared to falsify the Crown Prince's order. No one dared to go against his will. Unless they were tired of living and wanted to drag their entire clan down with them. She said that without any respect for the Crown Prince. Eldest Princess Tantai, please be careful with your words. One of the guards warned her sternly. Tantai Ruoli was shocked by the aura. The arrogance and willfulness she had disappeared instantly. She subconsciously took a step back and her face turned pale. I was just asking, these people were really scary. She only said one sentence, eldest princess, please don't say anything else. Otherwise, it will only make things worse. Even Ian Hao couldn't help but speak up. It was fine if she wanted to die, but she shouldn't drag others into it. Seeing that the crown prince was involved in this matter, Ian Hao didn't dare to ask any more questions. He quickly begged for mercy. Please don't misunderstand. It's all my fault that I didn't ask around properly. We'll leave now. However, I don't want to tell the crown prince about this matter. It will only make him more worried. I'll treat you two to a drink next time. How about it? After a long period of humility and flattery, the two guards finally nodded their heads. Ian Hao heaved a sigh of relief. He moved closer to Tan Taichen and said in a low voice, Let's go back now. I'll bring you to your residence. It's not far away. Tan Taichen had been the emperor for his entire life. He had never encountered such a cowardly situation where he had to beg for mercy before he could leave. Even if he wasn't the one begging for mercy, he had completely lost his face. His face was burning with pain. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. He took a deep breath. Let's go. As soon as he turned around, Chu Luyue asked with a smile, Hey, why don't you come in and have a seat? Tan Taichen's heart was blocked. His face was full of excitement. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. Finally, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said coldly without turning his head. No need. After that, he quickly got into the carriage and left the street. Chu Luyue waved and smiled brightly. Come often when you're free. Tan Taichen almost vomited blood. Digression, the carriage number was 4 and 5. It was wrong, it has been corrected. That's all for today's update. I'll continue tomorrow. It's so big. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 937. The people from the Taiyu dynasty didn't say anything else and left quickly. No matter how one looked at them, they looked rather pathetic. Chu Luyue only chuckled when the carriages had completely disappeared. She retracted her gaze and looked at the two guards. This way please. The two guards each took a step back and invited them in respectfully. Chu Luyue's eyes darkened. She didn't know what that Jun Zhuqing was thinking. He purposely left the best courtyard for her. On the surface, it looked like he was taking care of her, but he was actually digging a hole for her. Today's incident would definitely spread quickly. It wasn't just the Taiyu dynasty. The other two dynasties would definitely be unhappy with them if they heard the news. The weakest person occupied the best spot. This kind of thing would cause disputes no matter where it was. Moreover, this was related to the reputation of each dynasty. Who knew what kind of trouble it would cause in the future? He was purposely pushing her in front of everyone. However, Chu Luyue narrowed her eyes. Since the other party was so blatantly provoking, she would just accept it. She took a step forward and stepped through the door. Luyu, do you know that Prince Baiming? Why is he doing this? After entering the courtyard, Mu Hongyu couldn't help but move closer and ask softly when she saw the magnificent surroundings. Chu Luyue shook her head. I don't know him. I've never seen him before. Then what's his reason for doing this? Mu Hongyu looked around and felt a little worried. This place is great, but wouldn't we become targets by doing this publicly? Chu Luyue smiled. Even someone as straightforward as Mu Hongyu could see the other party's intention. It was obvious how straightforward his thoughts were. It's a waste not to take benefits that are delivered to our doorstep. Chu Luyue raised her hand and pointed as she walked. A few Dark North emperors have lived here before. It's a place where the dragon chi gathers. For them to like it so much, it's enough to prove that this place isn't ordinary. Just the fact that there was a level 9 Xian formation in this courtyard was already a huge gain. If you cultivate here, your cultivation speed will increase by quite a bit. Exactly. Others have already bullied us. Could it be that we still have to swallow this humiliation? You is right, we are definitely staying here. Elder Su Jin's eyes lit up. As he spoke, he quickly walked inside. I'll go take a look at this Xian formation first. You remember to draw those Xian formations for me later. Just as he finished speaking, the figure had already disappeared. Sigh, Xiaoran wanted to call out to her, but she hesitated and glanced at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue held back his laughter. Once Master Su Jin started looking at the profound formation, she became intoxicated and couldn't care about anything else. Elder Xiaoran, please take care of her. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Xiaoran's face, but she still looked at her gratefully and chased after her. Swish. Jian Fengqi waved his fan, looking confident and unrestrained. His pair of icy eyes were filled with curiosity and gossip as he looked at Chu Luiyue. Sigh, I say, you really don't have any relationship with this Jun Zhuoqing? Chu Luiyue glanced at him coldly. I can let you have some relationship with him. Jian Fengqi felt a chill run down his spine, and he immediately retreated tactfully. Haha. This young master was just joking. Joking. Actually, Jinghong asked this young master to ask. Yuan Jinghong? Just as he was about to argue, Jian Fengqi covered his mouth. Let's go. Let's cultivate. After this, we will have to compete with the geniuses from the other empires. It won't be good if we lose and embarrass ourselves. After speaking, she pulled Yuan Jinghong and quickly left. Your Majesty, I will also take my leave first. Wu Ming said respectfully. Although he was not the weakest among the people who came with him, he could vaguely sense that these people were extremely talented. After only staying with them for a few days, he could sense that the aura of these people had improved significantly. This made him nervous, and he secretly made up his mind to cultivate more here. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Wu Ming was the eldest disciple of the Master of Destiny Mansion. He was talented, and more importantly, he was down to earth and serious. This was also one of the reasons why she brought him along. Judging from his behavior, he clearly felt a sense of crisis and planned to cultivate and improve his strength. Of course, this was what she wanted to see. Now that he could stay here, it would be more beneficial for his cultivation. He might even be able to gain the upper hand in the upcoming competition. Wu Ming responded and left. Mu Hongyu then followed Jian Fengqi and the others, intending to learn from each other. Recently, she had learned some new moves from her master, and she was itching for a fight. After the few people left, Elder Chen Ku asked hesitantly. Your Majesty, are you really not worried? Although there are benefits to living here, but... He always felt that this trip seemed to be a little unsettling. It was as if someone had already arranged everything. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly, and there was a hint of slyness at the corner of her eyes, but there was a cold glint in the bottom of her eyes. What is there to worry about? I dare to come to Lin Province, so I dare to stay in this side courtyard. She lifted her feet and walked forward, her shoulders straight, and her aura awe-inspiring. I don't care what kind of demons and ghosts they are, I can suppress them. The benefits of living here, I will definitely take them. Biming Royal Palace. Hunting ground. Ordinary royal palaces did not have hunting grounds, and most of them were set up outside the palace. But in the Biming Royal Palace, there was a huge hunting ground in the palace. This hunting ground occupied an area of the aurora, and the edges were high fences made of refined iron. Each of them was as thick as an adult's thigh, and they were arranged neatly. There were also barbs on them, and if one was not careful, a large piece of flesh would be hooked off. If one looked carefully, one could see spots of blood on the fences. Some had been there for a long time and had already dried up. Some seemed to have just been left behind, and it was extremely red. The entire hunting ground was emitting a strong smell of blood. In addition, there was a barrier above the hunting ground that completely enveloped it. Not a single bird or beast could break free from it. At this moment, there was a person lying in the middle of the hunting ground. Blood was flowing from his neck, and it flowed all over the ground. He lay there motionless, and he seemed to be on the verge of death. If not for the weak rise and fall of his chest, one would think that he was already dead. But in fact, he was in a state worse than death. Because a black and white bird had used its claws to tear open his chest and was devouring his heart. Beside him, several magical beasts formed a circle and were staring at this scene greedily. But even though they were drooling, they did not dare to take a step forward. Because there was a man standing outside the fences. "Your Highness, the people from the Tianling dynasty have already stayed in that side courtyard." A guard quickly went forward, knelt on one knee, and reported respectfully. "Wonderful book house." Chapter 938. Is she satisfied? Jun Jiuqing stood with his hands behind his back. There seemed to be a lazy smile in his voice. "She should be satisfied," the guard said hesitantly. Jun Jiuqing turned his head slightly, revealing a perfect side profile that seemed to have been carved by a knife. His sword-like eyebrows were slanted to his temples, his nose was high, and his upper lip was slightly curled into a seductive arc. It added a touch of devilish charm. Vaguely, there seemed to be a touch of devilish red in his eyes, which were half covered by his long eyelashes. Even though only half of his face was visible, it was not hard to imagine how devilish his face was. This low voice dragged out the last syllable, and there was a touch of danger in it. The guard immediately lowered his head and hurriedly explained. "It's the people from the Taiyu dynasty." There was a misunderstanding with them. After that, he recounted everything that had happened earlier from the beginning to the end. Jun Jiuqing was silent for a moment after he finished listening. Then, he chuckled. "I didn't expect Tan Taichen to be so impatient. I really overestimated him. Your Highness is the mastermind. Everything is under your control," the guard said hurriedly. "Then, do you want me to send someone?" "No need." Jun Jiuqing raised his hand and stopped the guard. He seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on his face deepened. "Her temper really hasn't changed at all," the guard was shocked. He was the Crown Prince's confidant. He could more or less figure out the Crown Prince's temper and thoughts. But this time, he could not guess the Crown Prince's plan at all. The Crown Prince seemed to have a special relationship with the newly ascended Shangguanyu of the Tianling dynasty. If he was good to her, he would let her live in that courtyard so openly. If he was not good to her. When he mentioned that person, his tone was a little more interested. Who else could receive such treatment from the Crown Prince in the past? He could not figure it out and did not dare to think too much about it. He could only do whatever the Crown Prince asked him to do. However, one thing was for sure. Shangguanyu wasn't someone who could be easily provoked. "Let's go. Just wait and see," Jun Jiuqing said lazily. "Yes." The guard quickly retreated. Jun Jiuqing looked up. In the hunting ground, the man's heart was almost completely devoured, and he was completely silent. The black and white bird suddenly stretched its neck and screeched. A rank 7 martial artist's 5 internal organs were connected, and the heart was the place that accumulated the most power. After devouring the heart, its aura naturally grew stronger as well. Jun Jiuqing's voice was beautiful, as if it was soaked in alcohol. "All right, let's go." With that, the bird flapped its wings and flew away. In an instant, the surrounding magical beasts that had been waiting for a long time all pounced forward. Blood splattered everywhere. Not long after, they began to fight among themselves. The bird stood at the top of a fence and looked at the scene with a fierce look in its eyes. It was high up in the air. The scene was extremely bloody and brutal, but Jun Jiuqing seemed to be used to it. He gently touched the corner of his eyes, as if he was satisfied and satisfied. Then, he turned around and left. Yin Hao led the people from the Taiyu dynasty to the villa on the street next door. He was trembling with fear and did not dare to speak too much. When they reached the entrance, he braced himself and asked Tan Taichen and the rest to come down. "Your Majesty, we are here." Tan Taichen and the rest got down from the carriage and quickly looked around. Their faces became gloomier. With just one look, they could tell that this villa was obviously a few levels lower than the previous one, regardless of whether it was in terms of scale or other aspects. What kind of lousy place is this? Tantai Ruoli could not help but curse. They were from the Taiyu dynasty. Even if they were not as noble as the Baiming dynasty, it was too degrading to live in such a place. He's looking down on us. If everyone lived in such a place, it would be fine. However, the people from the Tianling dynasty lived in a much better place than them. How could they be calm with such a difference in treatment? Yin Hao's head was covered in cold sweat. Princess Tantai, this villa was personally arranged by the Crown Prince. It is also the Baiming dynasty's villa. How can it be a lousy place? Don't say such things again in the future. As he spoke, he could not help but say to Tan Taichen, Your Majesty, you should at least say something. If they kept talking like this, they would get into trouble sooner or later. Did they think that this was the territory of the Taiyu dynasty? Although Tan Taichen was also frustrated, he had been an emperor for many years. He knew what to say and what not to say. He gave Tantai Ruoli a warning look and said coldly, Ruoli, have you forgotten what father told you before? He told her to keep a low profile. She had to keep a low profile. If what she said just now reached Prince Baiming's ears, it would not do them any good. Tantai Ruoli reluctantly kept her mouth shut. The rest of the people also felt conflicted because of the series of events that happened. They all kept quiet. It was already embarrassing enough that things had turned out this way. If they continued to harp on it, wouldn't they become a laughing stock? Seeing that they had all quieted down, Yin Hao led them in. After settling them down, Yin Hao took his leave and went back to report. As soon as he left, Tantai Ruoli could not help but curse. This is so infuriating. So infuriating. Her eyes were burning with anger, and her face was red because of anger. Father. We can't just let this go. Tan Taichen sat in his chair with a solemn expression. Then what do you want? They've already made it clear that this was all arranged by Prince Dark North. Could it be that you're going to find trouble with him? Tantai Ruoli was speechless. Of course, she knew that he was someone she could not afford to offend. Now, more than half of the power in the Baiming dynasty was in his hands. It was not an exaggeration to say that he could cover the sky with one hand. Didn't they say that Prince Baiming has always been ruthless and decisive? Did he arrange this because the people of the Tianling dynasty had some connections with him? Otherwise, she really could not understand how the weakest Tianling had the right to enjoy the best treatment. Logically speaking, the Tianling dynasty did not even have the right to come to the opening of the ancient Phoenix Mountain. Even if they didn't have the right, they still came. Tan Taichen's expression was solemn. If that Shengguan Yu is really acquainted with Prince Baiming, then this is really troublesome. The room fell into a dead silence. After a while, a young man's voice sounded. Your Majesty, let them be arrogant for now. When the ancient Phoenix Mountain opens, we will know whether they are strong or weak, right? They lived in the best place. If they ended up in the last place, wouldn't that be even more shameful and embarrassing? Tan Taichen's expression changed slightly. Tantai Ruoli's eyes lit up. Yes. Father, what Zifeng said makes sense. Let them be arrogant first. When the time comes, we will use our strength to give them a slap. Let's see if that Shengguan Yu still has the face to be arrogant. Wonderful book room. Chapter 939. Night fell, and a few stars sprinkled down from the black night sky. It was silent both inside and outside the courtyard. Only the night breeze that passed through the hall brought a hint of coolness. Chu Luiyue was cultivating in her room. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she sat cross-legged with her aura lingering around her. Occasionally, scarlet and transparent flames could be seen darting out and dancing around her body. After a moment, she raised her right hand. Her fair and slender finger tapped lightly in the air. A streak of silver force surged out and quickly transformed into several streaks of light that intertwined to form a pattern. Then, she waved her left hand lightly, and several streaks of force also surged out. These silver streaks of light outlined the first strange pattern, which immediately connected with the previous one. If Elder Su Jin and the others were here, they would be able to see that this Xian formation was very similar to the level 9 Xian formation they saw at the border. Because this was what Chu Luiyue had copied based on its original appearance. To ordinary people who did not have the talent to become a Xian master, Xian formations were just a bunch of strange lines and patterns to them. No matter how they looked at it, it was very difficult to remember. Because Xian formations had their own rules, and it was not as simple as memorizing it in a book. The complexity of a level 9 Xian formation was even more unimaginable. Even a high-level Xian master would feel dizzy after looking at it for a while, and it was impossible to memorize it. However, Chu Luiyue was different. She had already cultivated to the level of a level 8 Xian master in her previous life. Although she had changed her physical body and her strength was limited, her cognitive ability was still at the level of a level 8 Xian master. In addition, she originally had astonishing talent in this area, so memorizing those level 9 Xian formations was not a difficult task. What she needed to do now was to simulate this Xian formation as much as possible. Time passed by bit by bit. Chu Luiyue traced it bit by bit according to the pattern that was engraved in her mind. The countless silver streaks of light in front of her also gradually outlined the rough outline of the Xian formation. The lustrous light reflected on her face, which was like porcelain and jade, clear and clean. Thousands of miles away, the clear and crystalline waves on the boundless azure water surface sparkled. Several islands floated above it, and the thick force condensed into a white mist that lingered around it. It was like a paradise. Above the void, a golden dot of light suddenly appeared. Following that, the golden light rapidly expanded, forming a golden halo. Space fluctuated and rippled. After that, a tall figure walked out from within. It was Rong Xiu. At this time, he was wearing a black brocade robe, and the aura around him was cold. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, the gentleness of the seventh prince had disappeared. What replaced it was an indifference and coldness that made one's heart tremble. The suppression on his body disappeared, and his aura instantly soared. At first glance, he was like a god of death that had fought his way out of hell. His blood and qi were awe-inspiring. Woo, the horn sounded. Welcome back, Your Highness. At this moment, countless people looked in the direction of Rong Xiu and knelt down in unison. Rong Xiu's figure moved, and he headed for the floating island in the middle. He walked across the water, but there was still a small distance between his feet and the surface of the water. With one hand behind his back, he seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll. However, in just a few steps, he had already walked a great distance. When he arrived in front of the island, he leaped and soared into the sky. Then, he floated back down. His tall figure was reflected on the black jade slab. Rong Xiu continued to walk forward. The soldiers in charge of guarding on both sides bowed respectfully. At the front was Rong Xiu's palace. This place was heavily guarded, and ordinary people could not get close at all. Usually, it was very quiet. But today, there seemed to be someone waiting outside the main hall. When he heard the commotion, he also knelt down in the direction of Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu took a look and narrowed his eyes. The person looked familiar, as if it was someone he knew. When he got closer, Rong Xiu confirmed his guess. As expected. This person was none other than 36 revered Elder Ming's only nephew, Mingyao. His position in the clan was not low now. As an elder, he was second only to the clan leader. Usually, they would rarely appear here. Even if there was something, they would look for 36 revered Elder Ming. There was almost no one who looked for Rong Xiu directly like this. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks when he was in front of Rong Xiu. Elder Mingyao, why are you here today? Greetings, Your Highness Saint. Mingyao quickly bowed. A guard at the side cupped his fists and reported with some difficulty, "Elder Ming has been here for 3 days. Your Highness, Elder Ming Yao has been waiting here since 3 days ago. He said that he has something important to report to you personally." Rong Xiu looked up slightly. "Where is 36 revered Elder Ming?" "Your Highness, 36 revered Elder Ming has been in seclusion for the past few days. He purposely picked a time when 36 revered Elder Ming was not around." Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly. "Elder Ming Yao, please get up. If there is anything, just say it." Ming Yao thanked him first before getting up. However, facing Rong Xiu alone like this, he couldn't help but feel nervous. He tried his best to pull out a smile. "Your Highness, actually, Ming Yao is here to represent the wishes of many clans." Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at him indifferently. "Oh." Ming Yao swallowed his saliva with difficulty and braced himself to say, "This. It has been a few years since you ascended to the position of the saint, but the position of the princess consort is still empty. Coincidentally, your birthday is coming soon. We were thinking. Why don't you take this opportunity to take a look?" Digression, continued at 6 p.m. Pft, I accidentally posted the 3rd chapter at the front. Everyone, make do with it first. The editor is not working today, so I can't edit it. I will edit it in 2 days. Ma'am mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 940. As soon as he said that, Ming Yao suddenly felt the surrounding air turn cold. It was bone-chilling. For a moment, his sharp sixth sense almost made his legs go soft, and he directly knelt down. But this kind of biting cold aura was fleeting, as if it had never appeared. Ming Yao gathered his courage and quickly looked up, only to see Rong Xiu's cold expression. His eyes were deep, and he couldn't tell what he was thinking. He hurriedly retracted his gaze and lowered his head, his heart on tenterhooks. Who didn't know that His Highness Holy Son didn't get close to women? Ever since he became the Holy Son, in these few years, who knew how many people had mentioned this matter? But every time, it was directly rejected by him. Until one time, an honorable elder really couldn't stand it anymore and secretly arranged for 2 women to serve him. Rong Xiu didn't fall for this trick, but he couldn't refuse this honorable elder's face, so he directly sent the 2 women to do chores. Originally, it was nothing much, but those 2 women couldn't even enter the main hall, so they were unwilling to accept it. They actually plotted together to drug Rong Xiu's tea, wanting to use this to curry favor with him. But these 2 people didn't expect that Rong Xiu himself was extremely skilled in medicine, and that cup of tea was smashed to pieces on the spot. And those 2 women were directly dragged out and beaten to death in front of everyone. The most important thing was that Rong Xiu even specially invited that honorable elder to personally come and take a look. That honorable elder knew that he was in the wrong, so he didn't dare to say anything after being tricked by Rong Xiu. After the matter was over, he directly went into seclusion. This incident spread like wildfire. Everyone knew that Rong Xiu was cruel and merciless, and he was not soft-hearted even when it came to women. Hence, they all gave up on such thoughts. After that, Rong Xiu was quiet for a long time. No matter how anxious the people below were, they didn't dare to do anything out of line. But as time passed, Rong Xiu had been the Holy Son for a few years, but he still hadn't chosen a princess consort, so everyone's thoughts finally became active again. The position of princess consort was a highly sought-after position. Who wouldn't want it for themselves? If a girl from any clan could marry Rong Xiu as his princess consort, the entire clan would ascend together with her. When the benefits of something were greater than what was expected, the courage and motivation people would have for it would be greater. Ming Yao dared to come this time because, on one hand, he had the support of 36 respected Elder Ming. On the other hand, it was because this reason was too legitimate and could not be denied. In the past, Rong Xiu did not want to marry her. Perhaps it was because he had just taken the throne and his political power was not stable, so he did not want to act rashly. But now, he had almost secured his position. If he still insisted on not marrying, he would not be able to continue. It seems that Elder Ming Yao and the others are very concerned about Ai's marriage. After a short moment of silence, Rong Xiu spoke. Upon hearing this, Ming Yao was delighted. He wasn't angry, but he didn't reject it either. Was there a chance? He hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Highness, the Holy Sun, is the backbone of all the clans. Your princess consort position has been pending for a long time, so everyone is naturally very concerned about it. This time, Ming Yao came here not only for you, but also for all the clans." Upon hearing this, Rong Xiu seemed to be quite interested and asked, "Oh? So, it seems that Elder Ming Yao already has a plan?" Upon hearing this, Ming Yao was instantly encouraged and hurriedly said, "Your Highness, to be honest, although you have never taken the initiative to consider these matters, we have to consider for you. We have already chosen the most outstanding girls among the clans. As long as you nod your head and invite them to meet you at your birthday banquet, we will definitely be able to choose a girl that you are satisfied with." Rong Xiu didn't deny it and smiled. "How many clans are there? I didn't pay much attention to them before." Ming Yao said a string of names. Other than them, there were also a few other clans that had good relations with them. They were all involved in this matter. Rong Xiu listened patiently and suddenly asked, "It seems that you have been preparing for a long time. Why haven't I heard 36 respected Elder Ming mention it?" Ming Yao suddenly felt guilty, and his eyes flickered as he laughed. This 36 respected Elder Ming is usually elusive. How would we dare to bother him with these matters? In fact, when they came to meet 36 respected Elder Ming previously, they had already mentioned this matter to him. However, they were directly rejected by 36 respected Elder Ming and were warned not to even think about these matters. Rong Xiu was the Holy Sun, and he naturally had his own decisions on these matters. If anyone dared to interfere with his matters, they would be courting death. However, after Ming Yao and the rest returned, they still weren't willing to give up this opportunity after thinking about it. What if Rong Xiu picked a girl from their clan? The reason why their clan could reach their current status was all because of 36 respected Elder Ming. However, he was old after all, and in most cases, he wouldn't speak up for their clan. Instead, he would try his best to avoid arousing suspicion. This made them faintly disappointed. They felt that 36 respected Elder Ming was doing this purely to protect his position and win the Holy Sun's trust. Instead of continuing like this, they might as well give it their all. Therefore, they joined forces with others to complete this matter together. This time, they took action especially when 36 respected Elder Ming wasn't around. Rong Xiu nodded in understanding. "I see," his thin lips curled up slightly. What a pity. 36 respected Elder Ming had racked his brains for many years to prevent his clan from causing trouble and protect them as much as possible. However, no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't stop it. Once a person was greedy, they would easily lose their brains. Seeing Rong Xiu smile, Ming Yao didn't feel any danger at all. Instead, he was secretly happy, thinking that this was a sure thing. Since that's the case, why don't we invite the other clans to participate as well? Rong Xiu said indifferently. Okay. What? Ming Yao almost twisted his tongue. He looked at Rong Xiu in shock, almost suspecting that he had heard wrongly. Others? Other clans? There are still 2 months before Ai's birthday. At that time, all the clans will come to celebrate. Wouldn't it be more convenient to do it together? Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, he didn't seem to be joking. Ming Yao suddenly felt that things seemed to be developing in a direction that was out of his control. But this was something that the few clans had discussed and agreed upon. If everyone came to participate, then what advantage would they have? There were so many clans. Who knew who Rong Xiu would choose? One had to know that there were countless women who wanted to marry Rong Xiu. In the past, because he didn't have such thoughts, no one dared to say anything. However, once he said that he was going to choose a princess consort. Who knew how intense the competition would be? If he chose someone else in the end, this trip would be considered as a waste of time. Mingyao wanted to object, but the person standing in front of him was the most honorable Holy Son. How could he dare to say no? In the end, he could only bite the bullet and agree. Everything will follow the Holy Son's orders. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 941. In the evening. Yan Qing rushed back from outside and went straight to the main hall. When he entered the room, Yan Qing saw Rong Xiu sitting leisurely by the window, playing chess. Yan Qing immediately saluted. Master. Rong Xiu stared at the chessboard, as if thinking about the next move. He didn't even raise his head and said, yes. How's the investigation going? Replying to Master, this subordinate has already obtained a part of the evidence. The rest can be obtained immediately when the time is right. Rong Xiu nodded with satisfaction. I always trust you when you do things. All he had to do was wait. Yes. Yan Qing got up and stood aside. He couldn't help but look at his master again. Thinking of the rumors he heard when he came back. His heart was like being scratched by a cat. But his master always had his own reasons for doing things. This time, it should be the same. What do you want to ask? Just say it. Rong Xiu said lightly. Yan Qing hesitated for a moment and finally spoke. Master, there's a rumor outside that you're going to choose a princess at your birthday banquet. Is this true? Of course it's true. Rong Xiu smiled, and the corner of his lips raised into a meaningful arc. No matter how bold Mingyao is, he wouldn't dare to spread rumors about I. What's more, he spread the news on purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't fly so fast as if he had wings. Yan Qing was puzzled. But madam, I also want to finalize this matter as soon as possible. Pa. Rong Xiu put down the chess piece in his hand. On the chessboard, the black and white chess pieces were clearly separated, like two dragons fighting each other. With this piece, the black dragon beheaded the white dragon instantly. Everything was settled cleanly. He leaned back with a smile on his face. I have been alone all year round, and it's indeed very lonely. It's better to give the princess position to her as soon as possible. This way, she would be able to come to his side sooner and stand side by side with him openly. It was to prevent some people from thinking about it for no reason. Baiming Empire, Lin Province. After a night of hard work, Chu Luyue finally stopped what she was doing when the first ray of light shone in through the window. There was a huge silver barrier floating in front of her. Upon closer inspection, this barrier was formed by countless silver streams of light. It was incomparably complex, but it was also shockingly beautiful. This was clearly a replica of the Dark North Dynasty's border barrier. Even the various patterns on the Xian formations were clearly visible. She actually managed to make a complete copy of it. Chu Liuyue's face was somewhat pale, but her starry eyes were incomparably bright, faintly containing some unconcealable excitement. This was not the first time she had tried to simulate a level 9 profound formation. Back then, she had long broken through to level 8 mystic cultivation and stayed in this realm for a very long time. Although she hadn't had the time to advance to the next level, she had already delved into quite a few level 9 mystic formations. This had also laid down a solid foundation for her to be who she was today. However, this was the first time she had successfully constructed a connected level 9 mystic formation. Knock knock. The sound of knocking came from outside. Your Majesty, we should set off for the palace. This was Wen Fan's voice. Chu Luyue replied. Got it. With that, she waved her sleeves. The simulated barrier in front of her instantly dissipated, transforming into streaks of silver light and quickly disappearing. Chu Luyue got up, washed up simply, changed her clothes, and went out. Seeing Chu Luyue come out, Wen Fan quickly bowed. With a hurried glance, he realized that Chu Luyue seemed to be in good spirits, her eyes as bright as stars. Yesterday's incident didn't seem to have affected her at all. Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to have vaguely become stronger. Wen Fan was secretly shocked. He had long heard that this person had a rare Tianjing Yuan meridian and was a rare genius. Unfortunately, she was harmed by someone later on, and it wasn't easy for her to come back. He originally thought that she would be much weaker than before, but now, it seemed like that wasn't the case at all. Wen Fan suppressed his thoughts and respectfully invited Chu Luyue out. Elder Chen Ku and the others also received the news and came out one after another. The convoy from yesterday was already waiting outside the door. The group of people got on the vehicles one after another and headed towards the palace. Unexpectedly, after walking out of the street and turning a corner, they bumped into the people from Taiyu dynasty. Wen Fan was at the front of the convoy and saw Yin Hao at first glance. At the same time, Yin Hao looked over. He recalled yesterday's incident and immediately became angry, even his face became gloomier. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. He spat on the ground. Our convoy is in front, so we should go first. Wen Fan, why don't you guys get out of the way? After years of being bullied, Wen Fan subconsciously wanted to dodge when he saw Yin Hao getting angry. However, just as he moved, he heard a chuckle coming from the carriage behind him. Wen Fan's movement stopped. Yesterday, Shang Guanyu had told him not to compromise. She was always there for him. This gave Wen Fan a little more confidence in himself. He immediately straightened his chest, lifted his chin slightly, and stared straight at Yin Hao. I'm sorry, our street is closer to the palace, so we walked in front of you as soon as we came out. Although your convoy is in front, we're all going to enter the palace, so what's the point of being in front? If we get out of the way now, we'll only add to the trouble. He raised the long whip in his hand. Smack! The long whip fell, and the sound of it breaking through the air was heard. You guys should just follow behind. Giddy up. Digression. After dinner, I'll update a little later. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 942. Wen Fan led the carriages away, leaving a trail of dust behind him. Cough, cough, Yin Hao coughed violently. His face was red, and he could not help cursing. What the hell? Does he really think he has a powerful backer? In the past, Wen Fan was weak and timid. He was like a little chick in front of him. If he asked him to go west, he would never dare to go east. But now, he had only been with the Tianling dynasty for a day, and he had become so arrogant. He really thought he was a big shot. The crown prince had arranged that villa for them, but that did not necessarily prove anything. The Tianling dynasty. How impressive. Tan Taichen lifted the curtain and looked at the carriages disappearing in the distance. He was expressionless. Yin Hao was afraid that he would be angry, so he quickly said, Your Majesty, please don't take it to heart. They can be proud now, but they can't be proud forever. Only those with real strength can have the last laugh, don't you think so? If it was the Tianling dynasty of the past, they might have a chance. But now, after going through so much turmoil and exhausting so much of their vitality, it was obvious that they would be at the bottom this time. At that time, they would not have the face to be so arrogant. Tan Taichen put down the curtain and said coldly, Let's go. The Biming Imperial Palace occupied a large area. It was magnificent and magnificent. It was said that the Biming dynasty had renovated the imperial palace to celebrate after the Taizu successfully entered the divine realm. In the following 1,000 years, the Biming dynasty had been protected by the Taizu, and there had been no trouble. The country was rich and the people were strong. This made their national treasury full. Every 100 years, they could withdraw a portion of the money from the national treasury to maintain the imperial palace. In addition, in Linzhou City, everything related to the imperial family would receive special care. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, Linzhou City was stronger than West Hill. Chu Luyue sat in the carriage, resting with his eyes closed. At first, there were some noises coming from outside, but it gradually quieted down. However, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to be a lot colder. Then, the carriage stopped. Chu Luiyue opened his eyes. "We're here." Wen Fan stepped forward and handed over the invitation card that he had prepared. The Tianling dynasty? The soldier in charge of guarding the gate took the invitation card and looked at it carefully. He was shocked. The fight between the Tianling dynasty and the Taiyu dynasty for the courtyard had spread like wildfire. Many people knew that Crown Prince Biming seemed to value the people from the Tianling dynasty a lot. Therefore, even these soldiers became nervous and didn't dare to slack off. No carriages or horses are allowed to enter the palace. Everyone, please get off the carriage and move forward. Chu Luiyue lifted the curtain and jumped down from the horse carriage. She looked up slightly and took a look. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled slightly. This time, she was going to take a good look at what tricks these people were trying to play. Heavenly Dragon Palace, Imperial Palace. In the center of the hall, there was a purple gold chair placed at the head of the table. That was obviously the seat of Jun Qiji, the Emperor of the North Underworld. On the lower left, there was a slightly smaller purple gold chair. Without a doubt, that was the seat of Prince Biming, Jun Zhuqing. Generally speaking, only the emperor had the right to sit on the purple gold chair. Jun Zhuqing was only the crown prince, but he was almost on the same level as his father. It was clear how high his status was in the North Underworld. Below it, there were 2 rows of seats on the left and right. Looking carefully, each side was divided into 2 sections. Apart from the North Underworld dynasty, there were 4 dynasties that came this time. Now, the seats on the left and right of the 4 sections were occupied. They were the Xian dynasty and the East Kam dynasty that came one after another. Jun Qiji and Jun Zhuqing had not arrived yet. Apart from the 2 dynasties, there were only a few servants in the palace. The atmosphere was more relaxed. "Brother Ning, have you heard of something new yesterday?" The Xian dynasty's emperor, Gongsun Shao, held a cup of wine and asked. Ning Yuan raised his eyes slightly. His expression did not change. "Brother Gongsun, are you talking about the matter of the courtyard?" "Looks like Brother Ning has heard about it." Gongsun Shao laughed. "We went early yesterday. I didn't expect to miss such a wonderful show." "What a pity." "There's nothing to pity. It's just a place to stay." Ning Yuan did not seem to care about this matter. Gongsun Shao sneered at the old fox in his heart. His acting skills were still the same as before. But he was not in the mood to care about this with Ning Yuan. Now, what he cared about most was the Tianling dynasty. "Brother Ning, you're wrong. This place was arranged by the crown prince himself. How can he not see it? If Jun Zhuqing wanted, he could have let them stay in the same place. But he did not. Wasn't he deliberately looking for trouble? More importantly, he was looking for trouble with the Tianling dynasty. I wonder if Brother Ning knows anything about the Tianling dynasty?" Ning Yuan paused. "My East Kam dynasty is very far away from the Tianling dynasty. Naturally, I don't know much." Gongsun Shao smiled and stroked his beard. "Forget about the others, but Brother Ning should have heard of the new Tianling emperor who is coming today, right? Some time ago, those things had caused a huge commotion. It was hard for them not to know. Brother Ning, aren't you curious about this person at all?" Ning Yuan's lips moved. Just as he was about to speak, he heard an announcement. "The Tianling dynasty's emperor Yuanshi, Shanghai Yu has arrived." The entire hall instantly fell silent. Everyone turned their heads and looked outside the door. A group of people was walking toward them. The person in front was a woman who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. She was slender and tall, dressed in red. From afar, she looked like a red cloud floating over. As she approached, the hall was suddenly filled with gasps of astonishment. Countless people's eyes flashed with amazement. "Beautiful. This woman was incomparably beautiful and exuded a noble aura. There was only one word to describe it: beautiful. She just stood there, and everything around her seemed to be overshadowed. Many people were secretly shocked. They didn't expect the rumored Sheng Guanyu to be so beautiful. The people sitting in this hall were the most distinguished people of each dynasty. What kind of beauty had they not seen before? However, the moment they saw Chu Luyue, many people's hearts skipped a beat, and their eyes were unconsciously attracted to her. Chu Luyue was already used to such gazes. When she reached the middle, she stopped in her tracks and smiled. I'm late. I wonder what everyone was talking about just now. Can you tell me so that we can have a good time together? Digression, that's all for today. Friends in the Typhoon District, please be careful. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 943. The woman's voice was clear, like pearls falling on a jade plate, echoing clearly in the main hall. The main hall instantly became even quieter. Wasn't she the one they were talking about just now? However, they couldn't say that out loud. After all, Sheng Guanyu was now the emperor of a dynasty. Even if she was slightly inferior to these people, her status was definitely on par with them. As soon as she spoke, everyone in the main hall suddenly had the illusion that they had been caught talking behind someone's back. After a short silence, Ning Yuan took the lead to speak to Chu Luyue. It's just a small matter. Don't mind it. Now that the Dark North Emperor and the Crown Prince haven't arrived yet, Emperor Yuanshi, please feel free to do as you please. Chu Luyue's lips curved slightly, and there was a hint of a smile. Thank you. Today, all of you can be considered my seniors. If you don't mind, you can just call me by my name. Although she looked young, her behavior was generous. She had the majesty of an emperor, and she didn't lose the etiquette of a senior or a junior. Ning Yuan had a good impression of her. He nodded and introduced himself. Dongming Dynasty, Ning Yuan. Chu Luyue nodded and turned to look to the other side. May I ask who this senior is? Gongsun Shao originally disdained the Tianling dynasty in his heart, but now that the other party had spoken so politely, he couldn't openly make things difficult for them. Xian Dynasty, Gongsun Shao. I've heard a lot about you two seniors. It's an honor to meet you today. If there's anything I don't understand in the future, I hope you can give me some pointers. Chu Luyue said some nice words with a smile, as if she really didn't hear what they had said in the main hall earlier. After that, Chu Luyue led her people to the seats next to Ning Yuan and the others. Countless gazes followed her. Seeing her leisurely appearance, many people's expressions became a little strange. This Sheng Guanyu doesn't seem to be the same as the rumors. Previously, he had thought that she was an arrogant and despotic little girl. But now, it seemed that she was not the case at all. There was nothing wrong with his words and actions. He was clearly very magnanimous and courteous. Gongsun Shao and Ning Yuan looked at each other. When I heard the rumors yesterday, I thought that Sheng Guanyu was deliberately provoking the Taiyu dynasty because she had the support of Prince Biming. However, looking at her, I didn't think that she would do such a thing. Gongsun Shao pondered for a moment, then laughed and asked, "What do you think?" "We only heard that you were coming yesterday. We wanted to pay you a visit first, but the distance between our residences was a bit far, and it was too late, so we didn't go because we didn't want to disturb you. I wonder, did you guys have a good rest yesterday?" He was asking about the matter of the courtyard. In other words, they were testing the relationship between Chu Luyue and Prince Biming. If there really was something wrong, then they would have to be more cautious in the future. Chu Luyue smiled non-committally. "Thank you for your concern, Senior Gongsun. Like all of you, after we arrived in Lin City, everything was arranged by the Crown Prince himself. Of course, everything is fine." She did not answer Gongsun Zhao's question directly. Instead, she flattered Prince Biming indifferently. This was his territory, so it was not wrong to praise him. Would anyone dare to refute her words? As expected, when Gong Sun Shao heard this, a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he did not say anything. Ning Yuan did not say anything. It seemed that he was really not interested in this. Taiyu Dynasty's Emperor Huairan, Tan Taichen, has arrived. Not long after, Tan Taichen and the others arrived one after another. Tan Taichen felt even more frustrated when he saw that the people from the other dynasties had arrived. He greeted them briefly and went to his seat. However, he could not sit still even after sitting down. Tan Taichen clearly felt that many people around him were looking at him. He did not need to look up to know what these people meant. They must have known about what happened yesterday. This made Tan Taichen feel even more embarrassed. He felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. However, they did not say anything, so he did not even have a chance to fight back. He could not help but feel even more aggrieved. Moreover, after staying in the main hall for a while, Tan Taichen noticed that Gong Sun Shao and Ning Yuan seemed to be more polite to Sheng Guanyu. Perhaps it was because of what happened yesterday that they suspected that the Tianling dynasty had something to do with Prince Baiming. Tan Taichen secretly clenched his fists. I'll let her be proud for now. When I have the chance in the future, I'll expose her in public. I'll make her lose face. His Majesty has arrived, the Crown Prince has arrived, 2 announcements rang out consecutively from outside the door. The noisy main hall instantly quieted down. Everyone looked at the door in unison. They saw a bright yellow figure walking toward them. It was a middle-aged man with a tall and sturdy figure. He was awe-inspiring without being angry, and his aura was strong. It was the Dark North Emperor, Jun Qiji. Half a step behind him was a young man. The man was wearing a bright blue brocade robe. The collar and cuffs of his robe were embroidered with a dragon pattern with golden thread. He had a jade belt around his waist and a golden crown on his head. He was as aloof as a tall mountain and as unrestrained as a misty mountain. A pair of sword-like eyebrows slanted to his temples. His nose was tall and straight, and his lips were slightly raised in a seductive arc. However, the thing that made people's hearts sway the most was his pair of unique eyes. He was born with a pair of red phoenix eyes that contained all the romantic affairs of the world. Although he was smiling, his eyes were as cold and indifferent as a 1,000-year-old lake. A faint red color could be seen in his eyes, like a faint blood red color. It was unforgettable. His eyes swept over the crowd. His eyes were relaxed, as if he had seen thousands of sails, but also as if he did not care about anything. When Chu Luiyue saw him, she was slightly stunned. She could not help but have a thought. This is Jun Zhouqing. What an arrogant man. Yes, arrogant. Even though he didn't say or do anything, Chu Luiyue instinctively felt that he was an extremely arrogant man with just one look. As if sensing her gaze, Jun Zhouqing's eyes turned slightly and he looked over as well. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Luiyue's heart trembled. This man was extremely powerful. Almost instinctively, her entire body instantly went on alert. Jun Zhouqing's lips suddenly curled up and he smiled. When he smiled, the ice in his eyes seemed to have broken. He was innocent and pure. However, under the contrast of the blood-red color in his eyes, there was a hint of cruelty and fierceness that seemed to be unaware of itself. Chu Luiyue could feel that Jun Zhouqing did not have any ill intentions towards her. However, she did not know why the vigilance in her heart did not dissipate at all. Sheng Guanyu? Jun Zhouqing suddenly opened his mouth. His voice was low, like the fragrance of wine that permeated the air, intoxicating people. Long time no see. He said with a smile. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 944. This voice successfully diverted everyone's attention to Chu Luiyue. Countless gazes instantly turned to Chu Luiyue. Even Jun Qiji, who had just walked in, couldn't help but look over with a trace of surprise in his eyes. There was a moment of dead silence. Chu Luiyue instantly tensed up and cursed Jun Zhouqing in her heart. Long time no see. Who have you not seen for a long time? Do I know you? How can you speak like that? However, she definitely couldn't say such words out loud. Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. She was very dignified and gracious, polite and distant. Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm doing very well. Thinking that her father was still in the other party's hands, Chu Luiyue could only grit her teeth and play along with the other party's act. Jun Zhiqing raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he wasn't satisfied with her answer. Is that so? But I haven't been doing very well recently. When these words were said, the atmosphere became even more awkward. Many people's gazes went back and forth between Chu Luiyue and Jun Zhiqing as they secretly pondered. This. Why did it sound like the relationship between the two of them was quite unusual? Could it be that the previous rumors were true? That Chu Luiyue really had Jun Zhiqing as her backer? Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed slightly, and she sneered in her heart. Was this Jun Zhiqing crazy? She didn't even know him. What did it have to do with her whether he was doing well? If he was really not doing well, then it was probably because he had done too many bad things. So you're Shangguan Yu. Jun Qiji spoke amidst the awkward silence. He looked at Chu Luiyue with a gentle gaze and a trace of curiosity. The 9 ministers mentioned you before. This time, it was also he who insisted on inviting the Tianling dynasty along. I hope that your people can also show off their skills during the opening of ancient Phoenix Mountain. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Did Jun Zhiqing mention her to Jun Qiji? This seemed even stranger. She tugged at the corners of her mouth, revealing a perfect and polite smile. I hope I can count on your blessing. When the surrounding people heard this, they all revealed meaningful expressions. Everyone knew that Prince Biming was decisive and ruthless. There weren't many who could receive such special treatment from him, right? Tan Taichen furrowed his brows. It was no wonder that the Tianling dynasty, which was originally not qualified, had also come to the ancient Phoenix Mountain this time. It turned out that there was really something fishy going on here. Looks like I'll have to see what the relationship between Chu Luiyue and Jun Zhiqing is before I can decide if I can make a move. Jun Qiji and Jun Zhiqing quickly took their seats, and the atmosphere in the hall gradually calmed down. However, from time to time, there were still some eyes that kept looking at Chu Luiyue. Obviously, Jun Zhiqing's few words just now had already made many guesses in everyone's hearts. Even the few people sitting behind Chu Luiyue were confused and vaguely felt that something was wrong. Elder Chen Ku leaned closer and asked in a low voice. Your Majesty, didn't you say that you don't know Prince Biming? But from the looks of it just now, it was clearly not him. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes. Just wait and see. Yes. Elder Chen Ku responded and did not continue to ask. Elder Su Jin and the others looked at him inquiringly. Elder Chen Ku shook his head silently, indicating that they should not be impatient. What she said before did not seem to be a lie. Moreover, for many years, the Tianling dynasty did not have much contact with the Biming dynasty. Today's meeting was really a little strange, however, they believed that she was. Biming welcomes all of you who have come from afar. Let me propose a toast to all of you. Jun Qiji wanted to propose a toast, so everyone raised their wine glasses. The hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone looked happy and harmonious, as if the open and covert struggles from before had all disappeared. Jun Zhiqing leaned lazily on his chair, one hand supporting his cheek, and his eyes half raised, as if he was not very interested in this. The wine glass in front of him was still full. However, no one dared to persuade him to drink. Even Jun Qiji did not say anything, so how could anyone else have a say? However, they had heard some things about Jun Zhiqing and knew that he was not easy to serve, so they consciously avoided provoking him. Mu Hongyu leaned closer to Jian Fengqi and whispered. That Prince Biming seems to be very powerful. Before Jian Fengqi noticed, Mu Hongyu suddenly moved closer, and the woman's warm and sweet scent instantly filled the air. He was slightly stunned and looked over, only to find that Mu Hongyu was talking to him with her side profile, but her gaze was still on Jun Zhiqing, as if she was full of curiosity. Because she was not looking over, she did not realize that she had almost bumped into Jian Fengqi's arms. There was only an inch of distance between the two of them. Jian Fengqi could even see the soft hair on her face. His heart suddenly beat faster, and even his ears and cheeks seemed to be a little hot. He knew that he should retreat, but for some reason, his body seemed to be fixed, and he could not move. His eardrums were vibrating, and it felt as if something was hammering on his heart. Don't you think so? Mu Hongyu did not hear his answer, so she turned her head. Their cheeks brushed against each other, and their breaths were close. Jian Fengqi's heart stopped for a moment. However, Mu Hongyu did not seem to notice anything. She consciously stepped back and looked at him strangely. What's wrong with you? Jian Fengqi came back to his senses and looked away. Nothing. He's Prince Biming. Isn't it normal for him to be powerful? Mu Hongyu rested her chin on one hand and tapped it. You're right, but it still feels weird. He seems to know Lu Yu. Out of all the people she had met, Jian Fengqi was ranked first in terms of playfulness and willfulness. However, this Jun Zhuqing seemed to be even more so. However, the two of them were not the same. Jun Zhuqing seemed to be a little evil. Jian Fengqi saw that she was still thinking about Jun Zhuqing. His brows furrowed slightly, and he felt an inexplicable discomfort in his heart. If they were really friends, then what happened yesterday wouldn't have happened. He opened his bone fan and dissipated the heat on his face. Mu Hongyu nodded in agreement. That's true. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, Jun Zhuqing finally spoke. Imperial Father, since everyone is here, let's cut to the chase. Jun Shiji was not angry at being interrupted. He stroked his beard. All right. I'll leave it to you to explain to everyone what's going to happen next. The hall had already quieted down. Hearing this, everyone looked at Jun Zhuqing. Jun Zhuqing looked around, and his gaze lingered on the woman in red for a moment. Then, he straightened up with a smile on his face. I believe that all of you are already aware of the reason why I've invited all of you here. When ancient Phoenix Mountain opens, it will be difficult for my Biming family to deal with it alone. Moreover, this is a rare opportunity for cultivators. Therefore, this time, we've decided that the people of the 5 great empires will enter ancient Phoenix Mountain together. Digression, there's something going on at home that may take some time to deal with. Continue reading at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 945. Hearing him mention the ancient Phoenix Mountain, everyone's spirits were lifted. Wasn't this the reason they had come this time? From this evening onwards, the barrier outside the ancient Phoenix Mountain will be affected by the force of heaven and earth, and the pressure will gradually fade. After a day and a night, the pressure will be reduced to the lowest point. And at that time, it will be the best time to enter. Jun Zhuqing's words were concise and comprehensive. There is only one entrance to the ancient Phoenix Mountain, and at the same time, it is also the exit. In other words, you have to exit from where you entered. The reason is that this opening was created through the combined efforts of countless ancestors over 1,000 years. This time, we took advantage of the right time, place, and people to open it. Everyone nodded, expressing their understanding. After all, this was a barrier left behind by a powerhouse who had stepped into the deity realm. Normal cultivators naturally couldn't contend against it. Only by taking advantage of this opportunity and working together would they have a chance. It was no wonder that they were willing to invite people from other dynasties to share in such a great opportunity. This was really the only way. 1,000 years ago, the Taizu of the Northern Underworld dynasty cultivated in the ancient Phoenix Mountain. At the peak of the 9th level, he successfully broke through and advanced to the next level. Since then, this ancient Phoenix Mountain has been left behind. In these 1,000 years, the ancient Phoenix Mountain has been sealed and has never been opened. No one has entered. In the long years, the force within the ancient Phoenix Mountain has accumulated and nurtured countless precious heavenly treasures. When the power within the ancient Phoenix Mountain has reached its peak, it will choose to open automatically and release the energy within. Then, it will enter the next cycle. And this process is 3 essences as 1. At that time, the accumulated energy within the ancient Phoenix Mountain will surge out like a tidal wave. All the cultivators within will be able to use this opportunity to raise their cultivation. Those with great talent and strength may be able to break through consecutively. With every word Jun Jiuqing said, the expressions of the people sitting below became more and more excited. In this world, the strong were respected. Who didn't want to become stronger? Such an opportunity, some people wouldn't encounter it even in several lifetimes. Moreover, the ancient Phoenix Mountain was worthy of being called a divine mountain. Who knew if they would find the method and power to break through the shackles of the peak of the 9th level? As long as he could get in, he would have profited. The Dark North Dynasty is generous enough to invite us to enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain together. Ning Yuan has nothing to thank you for. I can only ask the elders to do their best to assist us. Ning Yuan cupped his hands. As soon as he spoke, the others naturally expressed their gratitude one after another. Even though they knew that the Dark North Empire had invited them mainly for their own sake, it was undoubtedly a good thing for them. Why would they be so calculative? Jun Jiuqing looked around and seemed to be quite satisfied with everyone's reaction. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil smile. Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous. When the time comes, the ancient Phoenix Mountain will be opened by relying on everyone. As for how much of the heavenly fate one could obtain after entering, that would depend on one's own ability. Jun Jiuqing leaned back with a faint smile on his face. How about this? There's something I forgot to mention just now. When the ancient Phoenix Mountain opened, only 5 people could enter every 4 hours. In other words, everyone will be divided into 4 batches. Now, why don't we first decide on the order of entering the ancient Phoenix Mountain? As soon as he finished speaking, the main hall instantly quietened down. Many people looked at each other. Previously, they thought that as long as the ancient Phoenix Mountain was opened, everyone could enter together. Who would have thought that there would be an order? Moreover, the interval was not short. It was a full 4 hours. This might not sound like much, but one had to know that time was extremely precious in the ancient Phoenix Mountain. The more time one could spend inside, the higher the possibility of increasing one's strength or finding opportunities. Who would be willing to fall behind others? Therefore, the order became extremely important. The Dark North Empire would definitely be the first to enter. The remaining 4 clans would have to follow their own order. For a moment, no one spoke. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyes and quietly looked at the wine cup in front of him. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Jun Jiuqing was indeed someone who wished for the world to be in chaos. He was the noble Prince Biming. Logically speaking, it was not a problem for him to directly decide on the order. But he would not. He wanted the 4 clans to come to an agreement. On the surface, it looked like he wanted to be fair and impartial. In reality, he wanted to stir up trouble among these clans. Before they even entered the ancient Phoenix Mountain, there were already undercurrents surging. With such a commotion, it was inevitable that there would be some friction and disputes among the clans. This directly weakened the possibility of them joining forces. The Dark North Empire only needed to stay out of it and watch everything with a smile. Everyone present was smart. They all knew that the bird that stuck out would be shot. No one wanted to offend others and become a target. I have a suggestion. Tan Taichen suddenly spoke. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at him. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw Tan Taichen looking straight at her. Her heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, a strong premonition surged in her heart. As expected, she then heard Tan Taichen say, "The Tianling dynasty came from afar. It must be tough for them. Why don't we let them go first? What do you all think?" As soon as he finished speaking, the main hall became even quieter. Except for the host, the Dark North Empire, who didn't come from afar. Tan Taichen deliberately said this to emphasize that the Tianling dynasty was the only dynasty that didn't neighbor the Dark North Empire. He implied that they didn't have the right to come here. But not only did they come, but they also stayed in the best courtyard. This more or less made the others feel unbalanced. Didn't they say that they had something to do with Prince Baiming? Didn't they say that they had some background? If that was the case, then they might as well go first. Let everyone see if they had the ability and whether they were worthy. In the silence, Chu Lue chuckled and said, I didn't expect Senior Tan Tai to take such good care of me. Logically speaking, I'm the lowest in seniority here. I should be last. But since Senior Tan Tai said so, if I refuse, wouldn't it be a disgrace to you? Tan Taichen sneered in his heart, but didn't show it on his face. He said calmly, you're still young and have just been promoted. It must be hard for you to bring them to the Dark North Empire. Let's make way for them. It's no big deal. Chu Lue smiled and nodded as if she didn't hear the sarcasm in Tan Tai's words. Since you've said so, then I'll do as you say. But I don't know what the other seniors think. She looked at Ning Yuan and the others as she spoke. Gongsun Shao originally wanted to fight for the position, but he didn't expect that Tan Taichen would push Chu Lue and the others to the front. Moreover, he had already spoken to such an extent. If they refused, they would appear to be very petty. Gongsun Shao paused and said hesitantly, they're just young girls. They are all young children. Wouldn't it be too dangerous for them to take the lead like this? Tan Taichen laughed. You don't have to worry about this. You don't know that when Sheng Guanyu arrived at the border of the Dark North Empire, she had already memorized all the level 9 Xian formations that built the barrier. Once you enter the ancient Phoenix Mountain, you'll be invincible as long as you use it a little. Digression, I was busy outside today. When I got home, I fainted and fell asleep. My mind was in a daze. The rest of the update is about 9:30. Sorry. The typhoon is so strong. Everyone, pay attention to your safety. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.